Like, I think one of the best TED Talks I've ever seen from you recently about stealing from the youth to give to the old in this country. What do you think's happening, and how did we get where we are today?
Well, the D in democracy is working a little bit too well, and that is old people have figured out they can vote themselves more money. And people your age don't vote in the same kind of, the same volume. So the incumbents will blame it on things like network effects or globalization, but there has been a purposeful transfer of wealth from young to old over the last 40 years. The tax code's gone from 400 pages to 4,000, and those 3,600 pages aren't there to help the young and the middle class. They're to transfer money from people your age to my age. So some specific examples. The largest capital transfer in history happens every year. It's called Social Security. People your age, there used to be 12 of you for every one retired person. Now there's 3. And the wealthiest generation in the history of the planet gets $1.3 trillion a year in the form of Social Security. And I'm not saying we should do away with Social Security, but I don't think, I shouldn't get it. It should be moved back. People are living much longer. It should be means tested. Look at the 2 biggest tax deductions are mortgage interest rate and capital gains. Yeah. Who owns homes and makes money selling stocks? People my age. Who rents and makes money with current income? People your age. And then the 2 things you really need to get ahead are a college education and to build kind of a future and start thinking about a family, housing. And if you look at the price of housing, $290 average house before COVID, $410 now, interest rates. So I think one of the reasons that Taylor Swift is so huge is I think people have given up on saving for a house. I think the reason Airbnb and so many people are traveling is like we can't afford a house. So I see it all culminates in a couple of very scary stats. The average 70-year-old is 72% wealthier than they were 40 years ago. The average 40-year-old is 24, person under the age of 40 is 24% less wealthy. And for the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't as wealthy as his or her parents were at 30, which in my opinion is a fundamental breakdown in the compact we have between us and America. And when that happens, it creates so much shame and rage that every opportunistic infection turns into full-blown pneumonia. So whether it's Me Too, or the Black Lives Matter, or some of the anti-Israel protests on campus, I'm not saying those aren't righteous movements with their own momentum, but there's fuel poured on everything because I think young people are just pissed off.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the pod, but I got to share this quick business tip that I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's eliminate, automate, and delegate, famously from Tim Ferriss. I'm always looking for tools to help me do that. One of those tools is Riverside, the sponsor of today's podcast episode. Riverside allows you to record remote podcasts and video interviews in studio quality from anywhere. Not only can it record 4K video and audio remotely to ensure your podcast quality is top-notch, but it's also drastically improved my team's editing speed with the text-based editor. Riverside's in-platform editor allows you to upload your own content too, so it's not just footage recorded on Riverside that gets the special treatment. It can transcribe your footage, remove silences in one click, and create short clips just by selecting the text. Even better, if you make a flub, which I never do, then it fixes it. I love their AI Magic Clips, which analyzes moments in your podcast that have the most potential to get traction online. That saves hours of listening to your podcast for the 5th time to find the perfect clip. Riverside has you covered. We're always trying to remove complicated things, so don't waste your time doing what Riverside can do for you. I got you guys a deal because if I get a deal, you always get a deal. If you want to try it for yourself, get Riverside in the link in the description and use the code Codie for an exclusive discount. All right, let's get into it. I've never thought about that being sort of a powder keg that ignites these one-off instances, that it's like anytime you have hyper concentration of wealth in the hands of the few, then the many are kind of constantly on edge. That's really interesting. So is that what you also mean when you say that it's never been easier to be a billionaire but harder to become a millionaire in this country?
I'll have 300 kids in my class at NYU Stern. Each of those classes is a billionaire, either through all.
Wow, really?
Not yet, but someone will be a billionaire.
Oh, I thought you meant actually. I'm like, they're getting
introduce
younger.
him to her, and I just call him Big B. No, but there'll be someone who will be a billionaire either through alternative investments, probably a hedge fund, but a small chance one of them will join or start a tech company. I also think that probably about 10% of them will end up being supported by their parents. Whereas when I got out of school, it was pretty much everyone made a very good living. Some people did really well, but everyone did fairly well. So our economy has definitely become more of a Hunger Games. The Gini coefficient's gone up. And some people would argue that's a good thing. We believe in winners and losers. But I would argue, and I kind of go to higher ed on this, that when I applied to UCLA, the admissions rate was 76%. And I didn't get in. I was one of the 24% that got rejected. And I applied a second time and I got in. This year it's going to be 9%. And the artificially constrained supply among the elite institutions, and the kind of gestalt in America is that we want to identify a super class of freakishly remarkable kids and then turn them into billionaires, as opposed to trying to let in as many kids as possible and give them a shot at being millionaires. So I think the gestalt has changed a little bit in the U.S., where we romanticize these stories of people dropping out of school and becoming billionaires. I can guarantee every parent that 99% of your kids are not in the top 1%. And it feels like we've sort of fallen out of love with the unremarkable kids.
Yeah, I agree. I also find it shocking how big the endowments of the universities are at the same time that we have education costs for universities going up so high and sort of like a declining ROI that kids are getting from universities. What do you think about it? Because you're not quiet about the things that you don't like about universities while also working in one.
Well, my industry is arguably one of the most corrupt, maybe with the exception of social media. I work in a corrupt industry. People are under the impression that we're nice people with our Labradors, watching PBS every night, and we're noble people. We're like everybody else. Academics and administrators wake up every morning, look in the mirror, and ask themselves the same question, and that is, how do I increase my compensation while reducing my accountability? And we found the ultimate business strategy, and that's to sequester the majority of public from the freshman class and artificially constrain the freshman seat. So Harvard, $54 billion in endowment. It's grown its endowment 4,000% in the last 30 or 40 years, up 40-fold. It's grown its freshman class size 4%. So it admits 1,500 kids on 55,000 applicants. It has the resources. It could let in 15,000 and not sacrifice any quality, but they decide to artificially constrain it because if to a certain extent, homeowners and people who already have college degrees have figured out that this LVMH rejectionist exclusionary strategy is the best way to entrench the incumbents. So if I already have a college degree and I already have a house, I love it when UCLA is impossible to get into. How many people do you say kind of proudly or jokingly say, I would never get into my college if I applied now?
A lot.
Well, that means your daughter's not getting in. And it's not something to be proud of. In addition, once you own a home, you become very concerned with traffic, and you start showing up to the local review board, and you try and kill every new housing permit. I bought some land to try and develop in Florida, and a woman showed up at the local review board and said, I don't want them to build there because that's where I walk my dog. I call that trespassing. They decided to do a study and delay their approval another 3 months. So putting housing permits or taking them out of the hands of officials and putting them in the hands of homeowners, you have absolutely no incentive to ever approve housing if you're a homeowner, because an absence of new housing makes your house go up in value. An absence of elite education certification, if you already have it, skyrockets the value of your certification. So all the incentives are to make it more difficult for new entrants versus incumbents. And the ultimate example of this intergenerational theft, if you will, was COVID. And that is 1 million people dying from a virus would be bad, but what would be tragic is if we missed an opportunity to make my generation much wealthier. So we flushed $6 to $7 trillion into the economy under the auspices that this is a national emergency and people that need it. 85% of it wasn't spent. So 85% was saved, meaning 5 to 6 trillion was just kind of like, let's flush money into the market. So where did it end up? It went into housing and it went into the stock market. Stock market touches new highs. Housing touches new highs. Great if you're me and you already own Netflix and you already own a home. Terrible if you're coming into your prime income earning years and want to buy stocks or buy a home. The reason I'm economically secure is that in 2008 we bailed out the banks, but we didn't bail out the economy. And Apple, Netflix, and Amazon, just as I was coming into my prime income earning years as you are now, I was able to buy Amazon, Apple, and Netflix at $8, $10, and $12 a share. Those companies are trading at $180, $240, and $750 a share now. But now we don't ever want disruption or churn. When you bail out the baby boomer owner of a restaurant, all you're doing is robbing opportunity from the 26-year-old graduate of a culinary academy that wants her shot. So what you get is the credit card bill. The closest you get to the club. I'm in the club doing champagne and cocaine. You get to throw your credit card in. I run it up. The deficit is out of control, and it'll be fine while I'm alive. We still have incredible creditworthiness, but by the time you're older, I mean, deficit is nothing but a tax on young people. Mm-hmm. It's a delayed tax, but it just means your interest costs are going to be much higher when you're my age. So I think almost everything we do is an elegant transfer of wealth from young to old.
What do you say to young people listening to this that go, wow, those problems are so big? You know, I'm like you said, barely trying to make rent, doing what I can over here. How do I not become a nihilist and only want to destroy things?
Sure. So, well, the first thing, that sounds stupid, but it's vote. I mean, seniors figured it out. They figured out if they vote, they get money.
Yep.
So if young people want to figure out more child tax credits, you know, low interest loans for business, whatever it might be, more opportunities to engage in this economy, they need, first and foremost, they need to vote. Young people do have a lot of agency. There is huge opportunity. I know that you're making money in the mainstream economy. If you're willing to work hard, I mean, things are worse for young people than they are for old people now. But the reality is things are less bad here than almost anywhere in the world. Every problem I'm talking about, it's prevalent elsewhere and even worse. So, for example, if you take the poor state, Mississippi, the average household income there is still the same or higher than it is in the UK, Germany, South Korea, or Japan. So a lot of the anger and anxiety among young people is justified, but some of it is your phone reminding you that if you don't have a hot boyfriend and you're not vacationing at the Hotel du Cap, like all your friends seem to be doing on a Gulfstream, that somehow you're failing. So there's all this wealth porn trying to make you feel bad about your state in life. Mm-hmm. I do think if you're hardworking, understand technology, there's still a lot of opportunity, but there's just no getting around it. We're going to need new policies. I've been pretty open about my politics. I've endorsed publicly Harris for president. Her economic plan would increase the deficit by a third. Trump's economic plan would blow the deficit or be triple the deficit addition. That is essentially a tax on young people. So I'm kind of a one policy voter at this point. I think young people need more money. And this notion that, well, it's just a giveaway. Well, we give away money all the goddamn time. Corporations are paying the lowest tax rate since 1938. The super rich, not the near rich, but the super rich, the wealthiest 25 Americans pay an average tax rate of 6 to 8%. So I think we need an alternative minimum tax. I think we need higher corporate taxes. And I like what Portugal proposed. You know, Magic Wand, run for president. Portugal just passed a tax holiday. Everyone between the ages of 20 and 30 pays no taxes because they found that their younger generation was anxious, depressed, and also, quite frankly, leaving. I think we need something like that. I think we need sort of a Marshall Plan to level up young people, because what we're seeing is that 40 years ago, 60% of people aged 30 to 34 had at least one child. Now it's 27%. People are literally kind of opting out, and opting out is, I don't want to bring kids into this world. And I don't think it's because they don't want kids. I think it's because they can't afford them. Mm-hmm. So, you know, what's the point of all of this? If your kids are anxious, depressed, obese, and don't want to have children, like, what is the point of all this? And is it to create a class of, you know, it's this lottery economy where let's just try and create as many billionaires as possible, even if it comes at the expense of young people or people who are just trying to be millionaires. So I think, quite frankly, I just think we're all fucked up. I don't think we've got our priorities straight. Once you're above $2 or $3 million a year in income, you're not going to get any happier. So why? I'm turning into, this sounds very populist, but why wouldn't we have a very progressive tax structure at the highest levels instead of a tax code that massively declines once you get really wealthy? And the myth in our tax code is that the rich don't pay taxes. Actually, the workhorses pay a disproportionate share. The bottom 50% pay almost no federal income tax, and the top 2% pay about 90% of the taxes. But there's some nuance there, and that is, I call them the workhorses. Mom's a baller. She's a partner at Skadden Arps, M&A transactions, makes $2 million a year. Dad is a chiropractor, and he has 2 clinics. He clears $600,000, $2.6 million a year, right? That is a crazy amount of money. They probably need to live in a city in a blue state to have those types of jobs, which means at that income level, they're probably paying 48 to 52% in taxes. So when you say the rich need to pay more taxes and they think, well, I'm the rich, they're like, well, boss, I'm kind of working for the government at this point. I don't need to pay any more taxes. Once you make the jump to light speed and you can have the privilege I have where I basically buy and sell assets to make a living, I start companies, I sell them, I piece out to Florida because I have that kind of mobility. My average tax rate the last 10 years has been 17%. Mm-hmm. So when I was your age and making a lot of money, but it was all current income, I was paying 40 to 50%. Once I started making a shit ton of money, my tax rate plummeted. So it's the plummet part I don't understand. And I don't see any reason why you're not going to lose any happiness. If you took taxes, say alternative minimum taxes to 50% from 17 for someone like me, I'm not going to lose any happiness. Whereas if you can give someone a child tax credit, take them from $45,000 to $55,000, that changes everything in that household. So I think our tax policy, our fiscal policy, I think it's all designed to shove wealth from young to old.
Yeah. It's interesting. You know, I think the other part that I find fascinating is the institutional incentives that, say, big finance companies have. Mm-hmm. So, you know, for instance, today, if you have BlackRock, Blackstone, some of the really large companies out there buying a bunch of single-family homes, well, they have so much money, so much of our money, really, from us investing in funds and ETFs, et cetera, that not only can they pay more, but they also have the institutional benefit of having great credit with all the money we have on hand, and thus like a half to 1/3 the interest rate. So I think some of the reason why things have become so expensive are not just they're actually, you know, I don't agree with you on all the tax policies perfectly, but I do think it seems wrong that somebody could use my dollars to have a lower interest rate to pay more for our houses and then bundle them again. We also saw during 2008 that mass bundling of the American dream of home ownership can be problematic as well. So that is another one that I worry about. What do you think, though, about the people who might say, hey, I actually want to pay my fair share in taxes because, like you said, where else is there better to pay taxes than America? But they're concerned about things like trains that go to nowhere in California and government that can't do much with our tax dollars.
I don't think, look, do we need to increase tax rates or cut spending? The answer is yes. Yeah. If America was a household, America's making $50,000, that household's making $50,000 and it's spending $70,000 and it has $330,000 in debt. That's just not sustainable. And every day we get new credit card offers to keep rolling and paying, continuing to spend $70,000, not $50,000 in debt. We get $7 trillion in spending, $5 trillion in tax receipts. You just can't manage a household responsibly. At some point, the Chinese or whoever aren't going to show up for one of our treasury auctions and interest rates are going to skyrocket and you're going to have, you know, shit's going to get real pretty fast. So I just don't think there's any getting around it. I like states like Florida and Texas that have no states. I like when states compete. And I think ultimately competition is probably going to bring down sort of this out-of-control spending in some of the blue states because they're just, people are leaving. I think it's good to have intrastate competition. Government, when an economy goes above sort of 32% of spending is the government, it just becomes very inefficient. 2/3 of employment in Argentina is government employees. It's just not, there's no productivity, there's no incentive there. So I would love it if someone had an adult conversation and came in and said, we've got to cut Social Security spending by 10 or 20%. We're going to have to cut, 40% of all spending right now, government spending, goes to seniors. It's about to be 50%, which lowers the amount of money we can invest in technology, R&D, and education, which have a much bigger payoff. I think we're going to have to massively cut social services, entitlements. It all leads to entitlements. We're going to have to look at everything, and we're going to have to raise taxes because the far left and the far right, as far as I can tell, come together and agree on two topics. They agree on reckless spending, right? I want more services, more social spending. You want more military and lower taxes. I know, let's do it all, and we'll just keep racking up the deficit because young people haven't done the math. And we still can continue to borrow. Our credit card hasn't been shut off. It's irresponsible. It's mortgaging our future. So I'm with you. No one wants to have that conversation. The third biggest issue among people your age in the election is the deficit. And it never gets mentioned among our politicians. It's just I mean, the right, there's a myth that Republicans are more fiscally responsible. They love deficits as much as we do, as much as Democrats do. So I'm with you. I would love to see, all right, we have $2 trillion in deficit. You can have a small deficit to $400 billion as long as you're growing the economy. So that's $1.6 trillion. All right, come up with $800 billion in tax cuts or in spending cuts, and the other side will agree to $800 billion in increased taxes. But
that sounds way too reasonable. There
needs to be a grown-up in the room at some point here. It's gone on way too long, and because the deficit really hasn't popped up. I mean, we're now this year going to spend more money on interest on the debt than we spend on our military. That's at some point it's going to begin crowding out almost everything. So yeah, I'd like to think we're ready for an adult conversation. It hasn't happened yet.
Fingers crossed. So if we're sitting out there right now and you're talking to a young person and they're about to slit their wrists because they see no light at the end of the tunnel, what do you tell a young person today? Like, what is the actionable thing that you can go do now? Sure. Scott, having seen so many different moves in markets, what are some words of wisdom you'd have if they want to make money? Okay.
I just wrote a book on creating economic security, and I do think there's a formula. The first is focus, and that is find something you're good at. People say to follow your passion. I think that's bullshit. Anyone who tells you to follow your passion is already rich. And the guy telling you to follow your passion made his billions in iron ore smelting, right? Be a DJ on weekends, play in a soccer league, design jewelry with your friends, open a restaurant when you're already rich. The vanity industries are really difficult because there's 180,000 people in SAG-AFTRA. These are it's not easy to get a union card. That's the union representing actors and stage workers or producers. 83% of them last year didn't qualify for health insurance because they didn't make $23,000. So acting might be your passion, but unless you're in the top 1% and you're getting bright, blinking green signals that you're in the top 1%, go find something else. And I don't want to crush your dreams. Just have a sober conversation around what's required to make a living in that industry. So find something you're good at. And the key part of that is find something you're good at in a non-romantic industry. The guy who has this studio, I've been here twice this week, this isn't that romantic. He found some shitty loft space on Avenue B and rents it out to podcasters and is probably making really good money. That is not, he didn't dream of that when he was 9. I know I'm going to install sound insulation on a loft in a mediocre area in Manhattan and rent it out to podcasters. I don't think he was dreaming that when he was 9. But this is a good business.
Now I just opened 2 more.
There you go. This is find something you're good at and think, I could become great. And by the way, if you don't know it, when I was 17, I thought I was going to be a quarterback. When I was 19, I thought I was going to be a pediatrician. When I was 22, I thought I was going to be an investment banker. I got a job in the investment bank. I ended up in business intelligence and analytics. I didn't even know what that meant until I was 25 or 26. So try and find your job in your 20s is to workshop and find something you're good at and maybe could be in the top 10 or the top 1%. And forgive yourself if it doesn't involve college, because 2/3 of kids don't end up in college, and there's this industrial shaming complex. I've been at these parties. Did you hear, Max dropped out of Rutgers? And it's like, oh, shame. The parents have fucked up. The kid is a failure. 2/3 of our kids do not end up with a college degree. Workshop stuff, find something you could be good at, maybe great. It might be being a tax accountant. Okay, do you understand, are you willing to go to college? Are you willing to get a CPA? Do you understand numbers? Do you understand the tax code? Are you good with clients? Because if you can become in the top 10% or the top 1% of tax lawyers, those people get to fly private and have a broader selection set of mates than they deserve, which makes them really passionate about the tax law. I am so passionate about analytics because it gave me the ability to take care of my kids, take care of my dad, have crazy, outrageous vacations, and remove stress from my key relationships. Passion comes from artistry, mastery, and economic security. So whatever that thing is that gives you the ability to make some good money that you're good at, maybe even great at, in an industry that's not sexy, you're going to become passionate about it. I'm building a home right now in London, and there's the soapstone guy or the marble guy, and he's this Iraqi immigrant, and everybody knows him. He can tell you everything about the veining and the marble, and I was very open with him, and he's been open with me. He makes 2.1 million pounds top line. He has a marble company. He clears about 800,000.
That's pretty good margins.
Yeah, he's a guy in his 40s. He's been in marble since he was 28, and he's passionate about marble and soapstone because it affords him a really nice life, and he's great at it. And he gets a lot of camaraderie. He gets a lot of prestige, relevance, pride, ability to take care, to be economically secure. So the first thing is focus. Second thing is I call it stoicism, but the one thing that's in your control is spending. You got to develop a savings muscle when you're young and see if you can get alignment with your roommates or your romantic partner and gamify saving money. Even you got to figure out, you got to have a savings muscle that you can flex. When I was a junior in UCLA, I wasn't going back for my senior year unless I saved $3,000 through the summer. I had 11 weeks to save $3,000, earn and save. So everyone in the fraternity knew who the 4 kids were who didn't have money. I went to UCLA. I was in a fraternity with mostly Jewish kids in the Valley. They all had money. There were 4 of us that everybody knew were broke. Like our parents weren't helping us. We moved in together in a room in the house, and we had a whiteboard, and we gamified spending. I spent $78 a week, including rent and food, for 12 weeks. I ate top ramen, bananas, and milk. My big treat is every Sunday night I'd go to Sizzler. You ask your parents. And for $4.99, I was on the crew team. The entire crew team would go, and we would go there at 3 p.m. when it opened, and we'd stay till 8 p.m., and we would just eat several million calories. And it was fun. I mean, I would have rather had more money, yeah. But the ability to gamify, and especially with a partner, save money and start investing, if you're young, you got to figure out that savings muscle. And it's getting reward from other things, getting reward from fitness, from friends. The nice thing about being young is you don't need as much money to have fun. There's this Instagram generation that thinks you got to have a Birkin bag or go to Coachella, have fun. When you're in your 20s, pretty much like beer and making out is a pretty good brap. There's a lot of cheap shit out there available for 20-somethings.
Plus, you can't really do it after you're married.
Yeah, then it gets much harder. Well, actually, it doesn't get harder.
These days in Austin, Poly, though, pretty big.
It doesn't get harder. It gets much more expensive. So,
it's true.
Anyways, I call it stoicism, but getting a savings muscle. The third is time. For the majority of our time on this planet, we haven't lived past 35. So young people just cannot imagine they're going to live to be 100. And most of them are. And they also can't calibrate how fast time is going to go. Wow, my life has gone really slowly, said no one ever. If you, from the age of 22, just figure out a way to get 2, 3, 5% of your income out of your hands. 99% of us will spend everything that comes into our hands. You have the brightest people in the world with a godlike technology hitting you at the exact right moment, a chance to upgrade from economy to economy comfort, to add flourless chocolate cake with your panini, whatever it is, right? Telling you deserve this, it's worth it. Oh, there's 2 people looking at this hotel room. There's only 1 left. Buy now. Find a forced savings mechanism, 2 to 5% in your 20s. When you're my age, you're going to be fine. You don't start into your 30s, that's fine, but it's going to need to be 5 to 10%. It's going to be closer to 15 to 20 when you're in the 40s. But you're going to live longer than you think. Time is going to go fast. Well, I'm only going to get, 9% in the markets. Well, okay, that means in 24 years it's going to be up 8-fold. So the power of compound interest in time. And then the final thing where I really screwed up was the power of diversification. And that is, I've always made a lot of money. I came out of the gates hot, starting e-commerce companies, and I was raised came of professional age where you were told, be in it to win it, go deeper, go deeper. And my company was about to go public, and I was that guy that borrowed money against his stocks to buy more stock. So when 2000 hit, I went from looking at jets, no joke, to broke. Clawed my way back, 2008, all my money was in tech again, boom, broke again. And that was about the time my first son came along, which was really upsetting. But diversification is your Kevlar, and that is, 2 weeks ago I found out I made one of my biggest investments. I invested $5 million in a tech-based healthcare company, Tier 1 VCs, baller CEO, best investors, had to elbow my way to get in. That's a big investment for me. It went out of business last week. That's a zero for me. But I don't invest more than 3 or 4% of my net worth in any one thing. So it ruined my hour, but it didn't even ruin my day, and it certainly didn't ruin my week. Diversification is your Kevlar. The moment you have anything resembling an asset base, you want to try and take pieces of it and put it in stuff that is uncorrelated as possible. Yep. I'm about to invest in aircraft maintenance company in El Salvador. I just want anything that's away from my tech world. I now appreciate diversification because once you have an asset base, the way you get rich is probably through a little bit of concentration, your own business. You double down on a house, you fix it up, you flip it, whatever it might be. But the way you stay somewhat rich is through diversification. And I didn't realize that. I was always reading these stories about Steve Ballmer borrowing stock, Fred Smith doubling down on FedEx, Mark Zuckerberg never selling a share. No, diversify. Because here's the thing, the market will always trump individual performance. And no matter how good you are, if you're in tech in 2000, you're going to get hurt. Yep. Amazon lost 90% of its value from 99 to 2001. And then also a little bit of forgiveness. Recognize that when your stocks go down, recognize when you have a business fail, that most of it is not your fault. And at the same time, when you kill it and you buy stock and it doubles and you were smart enough or lucky, you weren't smart enough to buy NVIDIA 3 years ago, you were lucky enough. You are never more prone to a big mistake than after a big win. Bring in your horns. So I wish I'd learned diversification. I didn't save money in my 20s and 30s. My first feeling when my son came marching out of my girlfriend, it was supposed to be bright lights and angels singing. I felt so nauseous, and I thought, well, okay, in addition to childbirth being gross, which I think it is, I felt incredible shame because I was sitting there at 40 years old. I'd made so much fucking money, and I was broke because I wasn't smart enough to diversify. Because I thought, I'm such a baller that my company's going to be worth $1 billion, so I'm going to keep doubling down. So my first sentiment when I saw my son was I failed this kid. And I want to help young people realize I don't want anyone to ever feel that way. And you don't need to be a billionaire. Just start saving some money. Real estate's a great forced savings. Figure out a way to get it out of your hands. Keep saving. And just in case you don't go double platinum or have a podcast that's #1 or have a movie or buy NVIDIA, you don't need it. I can get you rich. That's the good news. The bad news is the answer is slowly. So what I would tell young people is even if you don't end up in an amazing job, if you start early and you follow this pattern, you're going to be economically fine.
That's such a good point. I think there's a lot of porn these days about, sleeping on floors, sleeping on couches, and that's the only way to make it too. And that if you want to be successful, you have to go all in on your business. And I don't know about you, but I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to sleep on the floor if I didn't have to. Yeah, I didn't want to have to sacrifice everything early on. I wanted to work really, really, really hard. But I think in finance we get lucky because we learn that. From an early age. And for most young people today, if they watch anybody who's had success, they go, well, they went all in. And it goes back to your point. I don't think I'm a top 1%er. I think we should all have a little bit more humility. Assume you're going to fail more and then you won't. And then I always giggle, when people say they want to be a DJ. You go, you know how to become a DJ? Become the CEO of Goldman Sachs. It's more likely.
DJ Soul.
Yeah. And you buy your way onto the stage. Who else buys their way onto the stage? Paris Hilton, Shaq.
100%.
How does Shaq make his money? Fucking chicken stores now and car washes, which I love as well. So I think you're right.
Well, I went to the U.S. Open and I thought, okay, I'd rather be Nadal or Federer, the #3 or #4 ranked tennis player. I'd rather be because I get to go to the U.S. Open and sit in great seats and I'm not stressed and throwing up in the. I'd rather be the #1 or #2 player in the world. I coach a lot of young men, and I had this kid. He got into MIT, but he had a chance to play basketball. He's played basketball his whole life at what I call a pretty mediocre school. Like, boss, go to MIT and buy a fucking basketball team in 20 years. What are you thinking? The sports is a terrible business. It's, if you do the math on what's required to become a basketball player, it is much easier to win the lottery. It's just crazy. So you need to have, what I tell young people is you can have it all, you just can't have it all at once. And you need to have a sober conversation around the trade-offs. And a lot of times what people don't take into account is, you can control your spending. And there's nothing wrong with cutting your spending and saying, I'm not going to live to work, I'm going to work to live. Well, fine, but you're going to need to lower your cost of living. And there's nothing wrong with moving to St. Louis and dual incomes, make 80 or 100 grand. You can get a home for that, have a really nice life. But be clear, if you expect to live in New York and you expect to have, I survey my kids. When I say my kids, I mean my students. 70 to 80% of them expect to be in the top 1% of income earners by the time they're 35.
Do they realize it's the top 1%?
Well, no, because I think the top 1% income now is like $700,000.
Yep.
They don't think of that as that much money. I mean, the average compensation at NYU Stern is $212,000 first year. So they think, okay, within 7-8 years, I should be making $600,000 or $700,000, and a lot of them will. But if you expect to be in the top 1% and maintain a lifestyle in New York or LA or one of the super cities, you're going to have to work pretty hard. You're going to have to, I had some fun growing up, but I always say that from the age of kind of 25 to 45, I didn't really do anything but work.
Yeah.
And it comes at a real price. I would say I lost my hair, I lost my marriage, and it was worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do think you either get to choose short-term or long-term pain.
That's right.
And I wish somebody had told me that earlier.
Which
like
is
these days, I never like to when they play those videos, like the reaction videos of the girl crying because life's hard and then they make fun of her. And that never really sits that well with me because I think it's because we kind of failed them. We didn't tell them it's going to be fucking awful. Your first job is not supposed to kill you from how hard it is. It's supposed to kill you from the pure monotony of like
awful
labor.
What was your first job?
Finance. My first.
Mine too.
Yeah. And so, 80-hour weeks, taking all the, Series 7, 24, 63, all that jazz. And I was the dumbest and the least qualified and didn't have any fancy, friends or family. And so, but it was also awesome because I learned massive pain tolerance really young.
It's a great training.
Yeah. And I think that's probably what we should tell them instead, that your first job's going to suck, but eventually it'll be worth it.
Well, what I would say is that, almost it's like rearing children. It gets better. We're told a lie that it's going to be great. At least for me, I think babies are awful. I couldn't stand the first 2 years. I thought it was just torture. I thought my job was just to make sure this thing didn't get near a body of water and keep it alive. And I didn't find that rewarding.
Do things make you happy though? You seem to have like a steady state of
unhappiness.
Happiness.
Here's the good news: I hate my life less and less every day. But
good.
What I say about kids is 2 to 5, it gets kind of fun, and then 5 to 15 is amazing, and then you kind of lose them again. I'm going through that right now. But
what's your oldest?
17.
Okay, so you haven't seen the other side yet.
Yeah, no.
Maybe that's good.
I'm waiting for that. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. It's hard to believe it when they don't, they don't call them and they don't. It's like that Tina Fey thing where you have a crush on somebody. My son was in town doing his college tour, and I'm like, would you like to grab coffee? I mean, you're probably busy, and I'm busy, but if you're free, I could find time, but you probably don't want to. I mean, you'll never find people less impressed with you than your teenagers. But anyways, look, everything's a trade-off. You just have to decide what you want to trade off and when and how much. And I get it. I'm not going to tell kids to give up their 20s. Have some fun. Spend some money. Try and find a little bit of money to put away. And also just recognize your first job, even if you don't like it, give it a couple of years, give it 2 or 3 years to see if it gets better. But also recognize you may not end up in your dream job right out of college. Few of us do. But that's a learning. I went into investment banking. I worked at Morgan Stanley. I hated it. They hated me. I was terrible at it.
Totally.
And that was a learning. But it was really good training because it gave me attention to detail. It gave me kind of the ability to suffer a little bit. It taught me a little bit about working in a large organization. It also told me I don't have the skills to be in a big company. I'm too insecure. Anytime people went into a conference room, I would think they were talking about me. I didn't have patience or maturity. If I met someone senior to me that I think was as smart as me, I'd get angry that they were making more. I mean, I just was too immature to handle a big company. And people romanticize entrepreneurship. I went into entrepreneurship as a defense mechanism. I mean, I'm just not going to be successful. I met my stallmate from Morgan Stanley, who's been in investment banking for 30 years now. We were both very transparent about our wealth. We ended up in almost the same spot economically. He's endured much less stress than me.
Right.
If you have access to corporate America, the U.S. corporation is the greatest wealth creator in history. The reality is most of us don't have the skills. We don't have the patience. It's not easy to get up and put on a tie. It's not easy to go to corporate events and pretend to like the boss's husband. This shit is not easy.
It's awful.
And be thoughtful and be patient. And occasionally you're going to suffer injustice. People less intelligent and less hardworking are going to get promoted. There's injustice everywhere. But if you can endure those injustices, typically over time, the American corporation is a great way to get wealthy slowly. The majority of entrepreneurs I think, do it out of, I mean, the majority of entrepreneurs are immigrants. They can't go to work for Google. They didn't get to go to work for Dartmouth. So when kids come to my office hours, they say, oh, I have an offer from JP Morgan, but I think of starting my own business. They think I'm going to break into song and say, go for the small business. I'm like, fuck that. JP Morgan, here you come.
Well, it's true. I mean, I was at Goldman, like I was a shitty little peon analyst back in the day for 2 years, and I hated my life for all 2 years of it. And to this day, 12, 13 years later, it's still like Codie Sanchez. Yeah, she's on these businesses. She's got this online thing. She also worked at Goldman Sachs. I'm like, that
huge credibility.
Huge credibility. And I hear they spend like about $100,000 a year training new members. So that's probably the cheapest university you can get is
great training.
Is a corporate MBA, basically.
It's a great, incredibly smart peers.
Yeah.
It's the way I describe it. It's like having served in the Marines. You're really glad you did it, past tense.
Yep.
But I've started a bunch of business, but what did I roll out first? That I was at Morgan Stanley.
Yeah.
Because we all are proud of our brands and the institutions, but anyone who right out of college can go get a graduate degree called a U.S. corporation, I would say do it. You might be good at it, and if not, it's going to help you zero in on what you're good at. And they do these crazy things called health insurance and retirement plans and training. First thing they did was they sent me to Columbia for this mini MBA.
Yeah, I got my MBA at Georgetown through State Street.
There you go.
So same thing. I mean, it would have cost me $160,000 is what the executive program at Georgetown cost.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And I had a hell of a time, but I think the most valuable thing I've ever done was work in corporations and start a business, not my MBA.
I think that's, like everyone has a path. I describe business school for the elite and the aimless.
Ooh.
You're good at what you do, you're smart, you want to make money, you're disciplined, but you have no idea what you want to do. We all try to sound very focused in our business school applications, but if you were really good and knew what you wanted to do, you don't need a graduate degree, you just go do it, unless you want to be a lawyer or a doctor.
That's a great point.
Business school is for those of us who were trying to figure it out, career switchers. Like all the investment bankers wanted to be consultants because we didn't want to give up the money, we just knew we hated investment banking. All the consultants wanted to be investment bankers. You would think we'd get together and be like, hey, it sucks over here. But it is a great way to figure out sort of what you'll like more and also get a great credential. For the first time, business school is not a no-brainer. When I applied, it was a no-brainer. Tuition was $2,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, my total tuition at UCLA and Berkeley as an in-state student was $7,000 for 7 years, total tuition. And 76% admissions rate at UCLA. I graduated with a 2.27 GPA, true story. And Berkeley let me into graduate school. Things have changed dramatically. And I'm now a good citizen. I pay a lot of taxes. I give a lot of money back to those alma maters. So I would argue their really slack admission standards was the right way to go.
Fascinating. What do you think about, one of the other things that seems to me leads to success long term, if people actually want to quote unquote win monetarily, is like a massive ability to handle failure. You I think are really interesting because you're very, you're not quiet about your opinions.
Right.
If they don't turn out to be right, you go, well, here's my thought process. That seemed reasonable. It worked or it didn't, but I'm going to at least say the quiet part out loud, and we can see how I tracked one way or the other. How did you get comfortable being wrong publicly and getting over it?
Being wrong a lot?
I don't think you're wrong a lot, by the way.
Yeah, I'm wrong often. I get a lot of strength from my atheism.
That's fascinating. Why? You just don't think anything matters?
To a certain extent, and that is, I'm convinced that at some point I'm going to look into my kids' eyes and know our relationship is coming to an end. Mm-hmm. And it's going so fast, and everyone who I'm worried about their opinion or being shamed by, they're going to be dead really soon, and so am I. So I think a recognition of the finite nature of life and your insignificance gives you a little bit more courage to try and squeeze as much juice out of this lemon as physically possible. And I do try to live out loud. And when I screw up, I try to forgive myself, because when someone else publicly fails, when they say something stupid or they have a business fail, most people will never be entrepreneurs because they don't want to risk public failure. It's humiliating.
That's my biggest fear.
Most guys, especially nowadays, don't approach a woman they're attracted to because they're worried about rejection. And what you realize, or what I realize, and it's been my superpower, is my ability to move through fail. My superpower is rejection. I ran for sophomore, junior, and senior class president in high school. I lost all 3 elections. And based on my track record, I decided to run for student body president, where I went on to, wait for it, lose. I've started 9 companies. 4 have failed, 3 are kind of a tie, got the money back, and two were hits. All you need is one.
Yeah.
1 out of 7 businesses succeeds, so I started 9. And my superpower was when I had a business fail, or when I was divorced, or when I lost my mom, I knew how to mourn and I knew how to move on. And the only thing I can guarantee anyone is you're going to have a certain amount of tragedy and a certain amount of joy in your life. The ratio of those things, some of it's out of your control, where and when you're born, a lot of luck, health of your loved ones. But the thing that's in your control is your ability to move through that failure. And I've been shot in the face professionally and personally. And I was always able to say, okay, my business failed, learned a lot, I'm going to go raise more money and start a new business.
What does that look like? Like right after you lose an election or you fail in a business, what do you do? Do you sit with like a whiskey?
No, I think it's different for everybody. What I would suggest is everyone needs to find things that make them feel good about themselves. Friends.
Well, what do you do?
Well, this isn't going to come as a surprise to you. I struggle with anger and depression. I'm very cognizant of it, and I have a series of kind of activities to try and, when I feel like I'm going dark. What's weird is failure or adversity doesn't send me into a depression. Other things do. So I think it's probably more chemical with me. But everyone needs to figure out, how do I maintain a sense of enthusiasm? I have so many really successful friends, came out of Ivy League schools, started hedge funds, got to $1 billion under management. We're making $2, $3, $10 million a year. And then the market goes south on them. There's a bunch of redemptions. Their fund closes down. And for the next 5 to 10 years, they're like stuck. They can't get past the failure.
Yeah.
And it's not hitting a home run. It's your ability to just get to the plate as many times, because at some point you're going to connect. So my cognitive behavior or tricks for trying to bust out of a depression when I feel myself going dark, I have an acronym, SCAFA. The first thing I do is I sweat. Exercising resets everything for me. It's like pressing the reset buttons.
Yeah, you're fit.
Well, I'm trying. I'm holding on to every last vestige of my youth. C, clean. I try and eat at home. Not a lot of butter or salt, which I find is really helpful. Abstinence, in the sense that I love alcohol and I love THC. I'm a better version of me, a little bit fucked up. I love being high. I love marijuana. I love alcohol. I'm really good at both of those things. And I think, I'm like most people, they're an enhancement to my life. And I know how to control them mostly. But when I'm feeling depressed, I just take them out of my life. Whatever's happening to those sensors in my brain, I just don't want to fuck with them. F is for family. My kids are so awful that they force me to take myself out of my own head and stop focusing on my own shit. They're just, if I can be around my boys, I know that they will come up with reasons why I need to focus on them. That's actually quite healthy. And the A is affection. I will tell my kids jokingly I'm not feeling good, and they know that means we watch TV, they'll throw their legs on mine, I let my dogs on the couch. Physical mammal touch, I think it's very restorative to me. So whenever I feel myself going dark, and the way I feel myself going dark is I start just getting pissed off at everyone and everything, and I start feeling really down on myself. I get quiet, I get withdrawn, and have trouble sleeping. And I'm like, but I've gotten to a point where I recognize it, and I can snap out of it. But your ability to move through failure, your ability to endure it, you want to punch above your weight class professionally or romantically, get used to rejection. Most people aren't willing to endure rejection.
Yeah, you stop caring about it after a while, I think. Well, you kind of inculcate yourself against it.
I've had disasters professionally. I've had a company go Chapter 11. I've had stocks 18 months after I invested go to zero. And I can get through it. I don't mind it. I've been single. I can't tell you the amount of rejection I've endured from women. And that's the reason I'm with somebody who's much higher character and much hotter than me, is all the women who rejected. I was fine. I could get past it. I wasn't scared of approaching people to ask for money, to ask them to come to work for me, to ask them to be my clients, to ask them to go on a date with me. That is the key to my success, is an abundance of rejection.
This is a slightly inappropriate question, but have you ever tried psychedelics? And that doesn't make you less of an atheist ever? Like, have you
No.
done like where you do the whole thing and you put on the eye mask and you lay down and you see the spirit
I did it
world?
in Austin, actually.
Yeah, it does.
I did
That
it.
tracks.
Yeah, I did. I just did a massive hit of ketamine.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've ever really done psychedelics other than mushroom chocolate. I loved it. It was a ton of fun. I learned a lot.
About yourself?
Just intentional about.
Yeah.
I went in very intentional. What is my purpose? What is my purpose?
Yeah.
But no, I'm pretty convinced that
just die.
that whole death thing is going to be just a wonderful long sleep. I don't.
Yeah.
And by the way, I want to acknowledge that as an atheist, our belief that kind of the world was nothing and then it exploded, that's pretty ridiculous too. I don't want to in any way try and poo-poo religion or faith. I think it's a tremendous source of comfort for people. I've always enjoyed going to church and temple.
Me too.
I like the community. But no, I don't have an invisible friend, and I think at some point I don't think this is a dress rehearsal. I think this is my first and last act.
There's something beautiful about that, though. I always loved that Emma Bombeck quote where she says, when I stand before God at the end of my days, I hope I can say to him that I have not one drop left. I use everything
Right.
he gave me.
Right.
And I think she was an atheist, so it's funny that she used God in the quote, but I think that's kind of what she meant. She's like, just leaving it on the line, like whatever's left.
Yeah, leave it on the field. Who is the great, was it a Mexican artist, Frida Morena, the one with the unibrow?
Oh, Frida Kahlo.
Frida Kahlo, she had this great quote, said, I want my exit to be glorious and I don't want to come back.
Oh, that's on brand for you.
There you go.
I like that one. So
Me
you
and
don't.
Frida.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. I could see that on one of your next thumbnails for one of your podcasts. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about, I want to talk slightly about young men today, because I think increasingly you're talking to them in particular in a way that's not so hard, bro, you got to do X, Y, and Z. It's like sophisticated, which I think speaks to a lot of this generation. Yeah. What's the deal with young men doing more video games and opting out and not asking women, to go out on dates? What are we doing, and how do you get around that as a young man?
Well, first, let's look at the numbers. There's no group globally that's ascended faster than women. There are more women globally seeking tertiary education than men. And when you look at, there's probably 40 or 50 nations that don't allow women to seek tertiary education. Actually, I don't know if that's true.
Does tertiary mean university?
Yeah, higher education, college and graduate education. More women are in graduate school now, higher education globally than men.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing. In the last 30 years, the number of women elected to some form of parliament or electoral body has doubled. Women are killing it. And by the way, I don't think there's anything we should do to get in the way of that. Single women own more homes than single men. Women under the age of 30 in urban centers are making more money than men. In the next 5 years, there's going to be 3 female college grads for every 2 male college grads. 2 out of 3 women under the age of 30 has a boyfriend. 1 out of 3 men under the age of 30 has a girlfriend. Why? Because women are dating older. Why are they dating older? We are producing way too few economically and emotionally viable men. And there's a variety of reasons. There's straight biology. Men's prefrontal cortex is about 18 months behind. When you applied to college, when there was another senior from your high school who was a male, you were competing against a junior. We're less mature. Boys mature later. They catch up at about 25, but at 18, they're basically a 16-and-a-half-year-old girl. School education is highly biased against boys. If you think about the behavior we want in school, it's sit still, be organized, be a pleaser, raise your hand. You're describing a girl. Schools that are just boys only end up with twice the amount of recess time because boys are like dogs. They need to be tired. They need to be kind of worn out. In addition, there's some societal factors that have been especially rough on boys. We have the second most single-parent homes in the world. And if you reverse engineer where a boy comes off the tracks, it's when he loses a male role model. And what's interesting in the studies is that girls in single-parent homes have the same outcomes, same college attendance, same rates of depression. All the studies show that while physically stronger, boys are emotionally and mentally much weaker. So they're not going to college. They're not mating. They're not dating. Half of millennial men say they are no longer dating. They're no longer even trying.
This is like the incel movement.
They're much more prone. Online dating, it used to be family, friends, and school, how you met people. Now it's 70% online. Yeah. And we don't like to talk about this because we like to sort of assume that every problem men facing is kind of their own fault and that any problem facing women, it's because they're victimized. And if you look at online dating, basically most women want the same guy. And that is, if you have 50 men on Tinder, 50 women, 46 of the women will show all of their attention to just 4 men. They all want the same dude. And so that leaves 46 men vying for the attention of 4 women. So a man of average attractiveness on Tinder has to swipe right 200 times to get one match. So that's 1 coffee. And then 4 of the 5 coffees will ghost him because their filter kicks in again. So a man of average attractiveness has to swipe right 1,000 times to get 1 coffee. So he gets what he feels is validation of his lack of worth in the mating market. Oh. They're much more prone to addiction. They're much more prone to conspiracy theory. They're much less likely to leave home. So what you have is an entire generation of men without male role models who are more prone to addiction and who start engaging. They become much more prone to misogynistic content. They start blaming women. They become more nationalistic. They start blaming immigrants. They stop believing in climate change. And some, they become really shitty citizens. And the ripple effect it's having is the mating market. And that is 3/4 of women say economic viability is key in a mate. It's only 1 in 4 men. We don't care. Men are disproportionately evaluated on their economic well-being. Women disproportionately evaluated on their aesthetics.
Yep.
But when the pool, men mate horizontally and down socioeconomically, women horizontally and up. But when the pool of horizontal and up of men is shrinking every year, there's just less household formation and there's more loneliness. And if you talk to couples that have been married longer than 30 years, 3/4 will say one was much more interested in the other in the beginning, and it was always the man was much more interested. Because the downside of sex is so much greater for women than men, men are much less choosy. Men feel like their obligation is to spread their seed to the 4 corners of the earth. Women's obligation is to be as filtered as possible, as selective as possible about inbound opportunities and pick the strongest, smartest, and fastest seed. So what you have is men, essentially women are much choosier than men. And when they're not going to church, not going to softball league, not going into work, men have very few venues to demonstrate excellence. What you find with these couples is the woman says, I wasn't interested in him, but then I found out he's really kind.
Totally.
I liked his hands. I liked the way he smelled. I saw him present to a client. I started getting attracted to him. He made me laugh. How do you demonstrate excellence as a man when there's no venues where you're around other people for extended periods of time doing something different? You know, I was just in Israel at the Nova Music Festival Memorial, and I met this battalion of IDF soldiers, 90 men, 90 women, all outside, all fit, all meeting each other. They're finding mentors. They're finding business partners, co-founders. They're finding mates. Where does a young man demonstrate excellence? If everyone's meeting online and everyone wants the same dude, it creates a few things. It creates a cadre of men who feel like they've been rejected by women, and it creates this environment. If you're in the top 10% of men, it's never been better. But it creates this Porsche polygamy environment where the guys who are the kind of the most attractive males, quite frankly, they have so much opportunity, it doesn't encourage long-term good behavior. So you end up with a cohort of men who feel totally rejected, and you have women who have found dating just across the spectrum is just a little shittier. That the guy they want is not interested in a long-term relationship, and everyone else, really, they don't have venues to kind of, if you will, fall in love. And the result is loneliness. And so I worry about young men not engaging with work, not engaging. One in 3 jobs used to require a college degree. Now it's 2 in 3. And in some universities in the Northeast, it's 2 to 1 women to men. So they aren't getting the qualifications. They're much more prone to addiction. And the deepest resource companies in the world are all trying to convince young men that they can have a reasonable facsimile of life online. You don't need friends. You can go to Reddit and Discord. You don't need to work. Just trade crypto or stocks on Coinbase or Robinhood. You don't need to shower, get in shape, have a plan, endure rejection, get out of the house, figure out how to make a woman laugh, be persistent, endure rejection. You got YouPorn. So you have, and I feel as though almost we're developing a subspecies of mostly males that are totally asocial, asexual. And once they get kind of into their mid-late 20s, they're still living at home, and they haven't developed those skills around socialization. I don't want to say they don't become savable, but they become very hard to pull out again.
Yep.
And the people I hear from most on this, when I started talking about this 3 years ago, I was accused of being misogynist because there's a gag reflex from a lot of feminists who are like, oh shit, it's Andrew Tate again. not recognizing that having empathy for men doesn't mean you're anti-women. There needs to be a more productive conversation. Civil rights didn't hurt white people. Heteronormative marriage or gay marriage didn't hurt heteronormative marriage. Nor acknowledging the issues facing men doesn't hurt women. Young men are 4 times as likely to kill themselves. They're 3 times as likely to be addicted. They're 3 times as likely to be homeless. They're 12 times as likely to be incarcerated. If there was any special interest group that was killing themselves at 4 times the rate of the control group, we'd move in with programs. Going to NYU down the block, you're going to see Black Women's Support Group, Women in Consulting, Golden Seeds, Venture Capital for Women. There really aren't a lot of support groups for young men because of the privilege I recognized, because of the fact that men have had a 2,000-year head start. We're kind of holding 19-year-olds accountable, 19-year-old males. And what we're finding is there's real knock-on effects in our society. And generally speaking, when I hear from these mothers, they say the following. I got 3 kids, 2 daughters, 1 son. 1 daughter's in Chicago in PR, 1 daughter's at Penn, and my son is in the basement playing video games and vaping. So less mature brains, less opportunity educationally. A lot of the jobs that were on-ramps into a good middle-class life have been outsourced or offshored. Mating market that is crowding into the most attractive males and leaving everyone else out. Fewer third spaces for people to meet and fall in love and mate and have children. And it's leading in a technology sector that is trying to convince men you don't need to get out of the house, you can stay at home. And I relate to these men. I was one of them. I didn't have a lot of prospects when I was younger, living with my mother, and I could have easily just gone down a very bad path. So I think this is something that is a real societal issue. I think the biggest threats to our society aren't climate change or even income inequality. I think it's 1, extremism from the far left and the far right, and 2, I think it's loneliness.
I think you're right. Well, I mean, you see when you go to war-torn countries, and I spent a lot of time building businesses in Latin America, you know what civil unrest looks like? It looks like a lot of fighting-age men on the side of the streets without 100%. Anything else to do. And if you've been through, I mean, Kareem's sitting over here, and he's from Egypt and has seen all around the Middle East, and I've traveled the Middle East and Latin America, and you can feel what it feels like to be in an area where there is a different kind of powder keg, which is young men that, understandably so, have more aggression, more testosterone, and feel like there's no outlet.
Nothing to lose.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what's interesting though? A small little spark of light. I think we're in Austin, like I was telling you, and we've been trying to find a church, and so I'm Christian and grew up Catholic, and I wanted to find a place we're going to have kids. I think it makes sense. It's a good way to install ethics and morals, in my opinion. And so it's like, where else do you go where you can sort of teach these? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so whether that's Stoicism or Catholicism, whatever it is, and I had the damnedest thing happen. We did a little tour, a group of churches to kind of see one we would like, because I think I would have PTSD from a Catholic church again. I just too many wooden pews. But we went to this church called Red Rocks, a New Age Christian church, which I kind of thought would freak me out. Text to donate. I don't know. It just kind of scared me. And yet when I walked in, I was shocked. All around were these really attractive young men and women, and they were happy. Yeah. And they were meeting one another. And I went from church to church to church to church all around Austin, which is a pretty liberal place. And in each of these areas, I mean, we're talking 18-year-old kids to maybe 35-year-olds. They're meeting one another.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, if you are sort of a lost young man or woman and you are white and maybe you come from a decent background, there's probably one place where you have your own little version of a safe space. And that might actually be a church.
I think, look, when I coach young men, the first thing or exercise I do is I say, give me your phone, unlock it, I won't judge you. And we try and find 8 to 12 hours in their phone, which is ridiculously easy between Twitter, TikTok, Coinbase. And then what do you have? You want to lean in your strengths. You have a lot of capital when you're young. It's human capital. You have a lot of time. So we're going to reallocate that capital to a higher ROI.
Smart.
First thing we're going to do is we're going to get fit, right? We're going to sign up for classes. I don't care if it's Berries or an app or there's a great fitness, the Aloe app has fitness classes. You go to whatever it is, F45, we're going to start getting fit. We're going to feel better about ourselves. We're going to feel more confident. 2, we're going to start making some money. If if you have a phone, you can make money in this economy. I don't care if you're a Lyft driver, TaskRabbit, whatever they call it. You're going to start figuring. If you go to a construction site and you have any skills at all, you can start at about $20 an hour. I don't care if it's 4 hours a day. The way you make a lot of money is by starting to make some money, because you get a taste for flesh and you start thinking, wow, this money thing's awesome. And then the third thing we're going to do is at least 3 or 4 times a week, we're going to put ourselves in an environment with strangers in the agency of something bigger than us. It might be church. It might be a nonprofit.
Yep.
It might be a sports league. It might be a riding class. You have to be around strangers. And we write down, every time you're there, you got to meet somebody, a potential friend, a potential romantic partner, and you got to go up and introduce yourself. But being in that company of other people in the agency of something else like church, it's just incredibly important. And young men need those guardrails. Young men, one of the things I got at Morgan Stanley, was how to read a room. Also, it's just so important. I think we talk about a code. I'm writing a book on masculinity. I think masculinity can be a decent code for a young man. And I think of a man is supposed to be kind of 3 things: a provider, a protector, and a procreator. And I think all 3 of those things are wonderful, and men should aspire to all 3 of those things and break down what it means to be each of them. But the only way you're going to get there is in the agency of others and being in communities. Men are dangerous when they sequester. When a woman doesn't have a romantic relationship, a lot of times she will pour that energy into her work, into her friends. She finds other places to give and receive love. They're much better at maintaining a social network. When a guy doesn't have a prospect of a romantic relationship, he stops showering. He stops looking for a job, right? And I remember this. When I was 23, my first girlfriend told me if I didn't stop smoking so much pot, she was going to stop having sex with me. And I was really enjoying that part of my life. So I got my shit together and I stopped smoking so much pot. Guys need guardrails. Young men need guardrails. That might be church. It might be the Marines. It might be a girlfriend. It might be Morgan Stanley that told me I couldn't party every night because it was really hard to get up at 6:30 and put on a tie and haul my ass downtown. But without guardrails, men don't demonstrate the same discipline as women in their early years or early adult years. It takes them a while to catch up.
It's such a good point. Yeah, and I think also women out there too, like what a dumb thing. I always sort of giggle about the 6'5" Trust Fund Blue Eyes song. Because I'm like, I can't think of anything that would make me more miserable. Like height has no bearing on happiness. Neither does eye color. Sure, money actually decreases misery largely, but I don't think it increases happiness to a huge degree in a relationship. And so I hope at some point women also start pushing back against some of these ideas. And I also...
I wouldn't hold your breath.
I think, yeah, you're probably right. But, I have a lot of friends who are my age. I'm a little older, and they make money.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, they start to realize that maybe men don't want to date them as much because they're really narrowing their field of who they will date. And so, and a lot of the women, women these days increasingly seem like the studies show that they don't want to date men theoretically who have different political views. So I always joke with my cousin because she's super liberal and she can't find a dude. And she's super cute and she works hard. And I jokingly send her the studies that say, maybe you should date a conservative because young men her age are increasingly conservative. So it's just math. And also, by the way, polarity seems to work out pretty well for most of us. Maybe we should. My mom and dad had 2 different political perspectives for like our entire, lifetime growing up. And now they're married for like 40 some odd years. Yeah,
there's something to the yin and the yang. I like that saying that the best marriages are one person loads the dishwasher like a Swiss architect, the other like a raccoon on meth.
I'm the raccoon.
Yeah, I'm the same way. My partner will make me load the dishwasher because she gets angry that I add no value, and I'm like, well, I've never added any value. Nothing's changed here. But then I load the dishwasher and she'll unload it and reload it.
That's Chris, my husband, ex-military.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah, 100%.
You're doing it wrong. But there's so many reasons. The thing I hate about men getting more conservative and women more progressive, it's yet another reason for people not to hook up. When I was dating, if I looked at all of my dates, all of my relationships, for the life of me, I would not be able to tell you what political affiliation they are.
I know, right?
It's like we've invented another reason for people to decide not to hook up. And what I tell men, the general advice, a lot of young people, how many times have you heard, I have all these great female friends, attractive, nice, high character, professionally, they have their act together, and they can't find a man. That's not true. They can't find a man they want to date.
That's true.
And my general advice to men is you need to get your act together. You got to have a plan. What's your plan, right? Every woman is subjectively or implicitly or explicitly is going to try and figure out, does this dude have a plan? You don't need to be a baller. You don't need to have a fast car and a beautiful condo, but you need to have a plan. Like, I am thinking about this shit. You need to demonstrate discipline. One way you demonstrate discipline is you're in really good shape. It says, I have my act together. I know how to commit to something. I have, I take pride in achievement. You got to have a plan, right? You got to be kind. You got to demonstrate a certain level of I want to call it aggression, but you make the plans. This is where we're going to dinner. You have manners. You pay, right? None of this. I was talking to this guy the other day, like, asked him about his date, and he's like, it's great, and we split the check, and I'm like, let me guess, you didn't have sex. I'm like, no one is ever going to kiss you. They'll all pretend that it's fine, you paying, and then she's not going to have sex with you. I
do remember the one date where they did that. Like, to this day, I remember the guy that did that. I was like, you want me to pay? And he was like, sure, you want to? And I was like,
yeah, when women offer, that's the most hollow offer ever. And I know that's sexist, but there's evidence to back that up.
Yeah, it's true.
I tell my son, if they're in the company of women and they can't pay, they shouldn't go. But,
yeah, or go somewhere for free.
Yeah, or
go for a walk. That's totally fair. Go do a workout.
Take a dog for a walk, whatever.
I get it, yeah.
Whatever it is. But women are generally attracted to men for 3 reasons. The third is kindness. They want someone who's going to be a long-term partner. The second is intellect. If you're funny, really lean into it, because the fastest way to communicate intellect, and men who make good decisions, women are attracted to them because if you make good decisions, your kids are more likely to survive. But the number one is your ability to signal resources. Now, the easiest way to signal resources is to show up with a Rolex and a BMW, but also having a plan is signaling future resources, right? So you just have to be thoughtful about those. And what I tell men is, you got to have your act together. You got to say, would you want to mate with you? Start figuring out. Start looking in the mirror. Start looking the way you dress. Christ, you have bad breath? What is it, man? Get your act together. Start becoming more attractive to you and to women. What I coach women around is what I call the second coffee. You can't tell women to lower their standards. That's just not. But what I say is, if you go on a date and it's not sparks, but maybe it was nice, but you think, oh, there was no chemistry there, give it a second date. Because a lot of couples that have been married found that the woman who's much finer filter, she started to find, he was able to demonstrate excellence over the medium term, and she fell for him. Second coffee. Like, unless it's just awful or it just not, I'm not going to tell anyone, I can't tell anyone to lower the standards, but give it a second coffee. You just don't know. And then the other thing I tell all young people, your default setting is yes. I have some friends going out. Yes, I'll come. Oh, there's a dinner. Oh, there's a lame corporate event. Yes, yes, yes. Return eye contact. And what I tell men is, approach strangers. And if you express romantic interest or you go up to someone and they're not interested, you're both going to be fine. You're both going to be fine. And men get a lot of mixed signals in the professional world around the difference around where contact could be harassment. And I'm like, if you don't know the difference between expressing interest and harassing somebody, you have bigger problems. But something we don't like to talk about, 1 in 3 relationships begin at work.
Yeah.
And 99% of them are consensual.
That's
and there's been some
my
horrific,
first husband.
There's some horrific abuses of power in the workplace. Those people should be fired or worse. But it's okay to meet people at work. There's been 12 marriages at the companies I've started. I see that as a mitzvah. I think it's a wonderful thing.
I love that.
So anyways, I'm worried that young people, we aren't creating the economic stability, the economic prosperity, or even inventing the third spaces, whether it's church, national service, parks, leagues, nonprofits, a chance for them to meet, a chance for them to get together and quote-unquote fall in love. And we're regressing to a more primal vision of mating where a small number of men get to procreate. 80% of women have procreated. It's only 40% of men throughout history. And we're moving back.
80% of, say that again?
80% of women have procreated, have had a child.
And
40% of men, only 40% of men have. Because generally speaking, the middle class is an accident. A group of men in the middle who are attracted to women is an accident. It happened in World War II. 7 men came home from war. They demonstrated excellence. They were in uniform. They were in good shape. And the government flushed a bunch of money into their pockets with the GI Bill, the National Highway Act. So there were a lot of very attractive men coming home, and it started the baby boom. And these loving, supportive, confident households created this prosperity and this progressive outlook. We're like, let's give women a shot. Let's give non-whites a shot. Everybody, this prosperity and rights shoved into the middle class is such a wonderful thing. We should shove it into as many corners as possible. That's the greatest innovation in history. But it started with young people having more economic opportunity and, quite frankly, a group of men that were more attractive to potential mates. And what we have in our society right now, unfortunately, is too many men who are just not economically or emotionally viable.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What a beautiful disaster. I think where I kind of want to end is maybe not the most of high notes, but I think important to note, and I love some of your writing on this. A little wrap up here. Let's talk about another boom, not the baby boom, but the LBO boom, and what happened with leveraged buyouts in this country, and what happened with sort of the few owning much, because I don't think the average person quite realizes what's happened right underneath our nose.
Sure. I look at it mostly through the lens of, so I'm not one of these people that thinks all private equity and buyout firms has been bad, because I know a lot of dentists and people who own lawn care and people who own chiropractic clinics who have found liquidity by a private equity firm coming in and trying to consolidate it, consolidate the back end. So I think capital coming into the market is actually a good thing for people. Where I see a concentration of power is across industry. One firm controls 2/3 of all social media. One firm controls 93% of the $300 billion search market. There's 3 chicken companies that control like 80% of chicken. We have allowed so much concentration of power that the rents they can charge on consumers, on marketers, go up every year. So Amazon 20 years ago, if you were a third-party marketer or third-party reseller selling your products on Amazon, they took about 20% of your gross dollar volume. Now they take 45% because they kind of own the market. If you don't sell on Amazon, you're kind of not selling online. So this concentration of power that has raised rents across corporate America and, quite frankly, raised rents across parents. I know TikTok's bad. I know Snap's bad. Like, how do I tell my kid to communicate with his friends back home if I get him off Snap? That's it. You know what? These companies have so much power. I'm going to tell my kid not to have an iPhone? So there's so much concentration of power that the rents have gotten greater and greater and greater. So I go more towards antitrust. I think there needs to be a lot of breakups. It's good for shareholders. When AT&T was broken up into the 7 baby bells, all 7 of those companies were worth more than the original AT&T within 10 years. Google hasn't really innovated. Search isn't much different than it was 10 years ago because they haven't needed to. They have 93% share. They buy any company that threatens them.
Microsoft, too, with the suite of products. I mean, they just basically recreate any product that comes out there in the marketplace that they can put inside of a Microsoft suite.
That's right, and they're a perfect example of the power of antitrust, because in 1999 they were found guilty of monopoly abuse and they were ordered to break up. And even though they overturned the ruling, they stopped bundling and putting companies out of business. So if there hadn't been a DOJ ruling against Microsoft in 1999, we'd all be saying, I don't know, bang it. Google is a function of antitrust. So the ability, once companies get too big, breaking them up and auctioning the environment, there's more people. The rents for labor go up. Employees do better because there's more people bidding on their time. There's more tax revenue. Shareholders traditionally do well. PayPal used to be owned by eBay, and they spun it. It's now worth, I think, 15 times what eBay is worth. So taxes, more entrepreneurship, higher salaries, more shareholder value. The only person that loses is the CEO, who generally wants to sit on the Iron Throne of all 7 realms, not just Westeros. So I would argue the way to oxygenate the market would be to go through industry by industry and break up. Launching a tech company is really difficult right now. There's a lot of bigger players, and there's just a concentration of power across industry that is very hard to break into. And they donate a lot of money to Washington. There's regulatory capture. Why do I have to buy insurance to get a mortgage? Because they're in bed with each other, right? I think there's a lot that can be done to make small business and bring down the costs for regular consumers through antitrust. The private equity market, I'm of two minds. Is there abuses when big players come in? Yes, but at the same time, I like a lot of capital in the market bidding on entrepreneurs' businesses. There's a person on the other end of that pool maintenance company that just got bought. That guy, his son doesn't want to go into it, right? And he's got a nice little business, and a private equity shop comes in and says, okay, I'll pay $1 million for your business. You work here for 4 years and you have a way out. So I'm of two minds, and I work with a lot of private equity firms, and I've generally found that they're good people trying to, who pay well. So I can understand that there's some situations where they come into a company, lever it up in debt, let it go out of business, raid the employee pension fund. I find a lot of that is a bit made for news, for the business section of the New York Times. I don't think they're as mendacious as people think. Now, venture capitalists, I think that's another story.
Yeah.
So I think there's some nuance there, but generally speaking, I'm a fan of capital coming into the small business market.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I also think, like, to your point in the very beginning, everybody's looking for a way to make more with less risk. And so I think the concern is always not that private equity is evil, or even that Google and all of them are evil. It's just, how do we make sure that our perverse incentives of always wanting to win individually do not overcome everything else? And so I get concerned when I see private equity go from owning 4% of the, private businesses to 20% over a, depending on how you measure it, somewhere between a 10 and 12-year period. But man, you could say the big four are much more of an instigator on the public market than the private equity companies are on the private market.
7 companies are responsible for a third of the returns. One company, Apple, is worth more than the entire UK stock market. I mean, we have this illusion that the stock market is really robust.
I know.
There's 7 companies that are driving the majority of the return. If you tell me what stocks you have, I mean, if Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, Meta, Nvidia, Netflix, and I don't know if the other one's Microsoft, if you don't own one of those 7 stocks, you've underperformed the market and your returns are probably flat.
What do you think about people who say, like, the argument today is like, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock own, let's call it 80% of the S&P and 40% of the broad market. But then people will say, but they're passive. They're passive investors. What do you think about that? Do you think they actually change governance on most of our companies in the U.S. because they own them, or are they truly passive?
It's a really interesting question. So concentration of ownership is just bad to begin with. Although I would argue that those industries, it's an interesting question. So there's 2 sides to it. I love low-cost index funds. You want to have some fun. Everybody believes they're smarter than your average bear. I'm not immune. I stock pick. But what I would tell young people is 70% of any of your savings, 99% of your savings is going to come from money you can't touch, whether it's equity or things that automatically go into a savings account. Low-cost index funds, I work with the brightest people in finance. I've advised the most prestigious VCs, private equity funds, and my sum net conclusion is no one has any idea. Mm-hmm. And the VCs that outperform are the ones that get better deal flow. But if you took the entire alternative investments industry, any logo on CNBC, anyone that advertises, any hedge fund, it's essentially a grift. And if you look at their performance, they've exactly underperformed the S&P by the amount of their fees.
Exactly.
So Vanguard, low-cost SPY, index funds, I absolutely think that's the way to go. Now, whether those funds have become so big that they dictate corporate governance and they're passive so they don't create enough churn with management, I don't know. It's an interesting theory how they've created a stasis in the market. That's an interesting question. I don't have a viewpoint. Where I take from these is I tell people, they're like, oh, is it too late to buy NVIDIA? I'm like, I don't know, but it's not too late to buy an index fund. And your 27 cents on the dollar are going to go into the Magnificent Seven. So if they double, you're fine. But if the other 493 companies have their day in the sun, you're going to get to participate. And the market, especially in America, I wonder if emerging markets are about to finally have their day in the sun because the U.S. market is actually pretty expensive. But along the lines of index or diversification, I would even suggest like index funds that have some exposure to foreign markets now because the U.S. market looks historically expensive. But you don't need to be a hero. It's like what John Bogle from Vanguard said, you don't need to find the needle in the haystack, buy the whole goddamn haystack. And the amazing thing about humanity is that with population growth and innovation and technology, generally speaking over the medium and long term, we become more productive, and the market goes up and to the right. So, yeah, pretend you know more than everyone else. Have an expensive lesson figuring out you don't. Take a third, buy Dogecoin or buy whatever it is, buy the new AI company. Put 70% into, and this is the key, low-cost index funds. You're in this business. People don't realize how much of their returns are eaten up by fees.
No, because they hide them and they think it's just the expense ratio.
Well, 2%, that doesn't sound bad. That's a 30-year return.
Yeah, 100%. And then you don't add the fund admin fees and anything you have inside of it. Yeah, I totally agree. I think Vanguard's a great place to invest, an awful place to work. Unless you don't really like working that hard.
Did you work there?
Yeah. It's my first, it's socialism in a company. There's no meritocracy. It's kind of like if you want to progress in the military, they go, cool, 3 years. Like you're at this level, and then at 3 years you can go somewhere else. That was my experience. It was a long time ago. That was right out of college. And, when you're young and dumb, you're young and dumb. So I don't know how much of that was just like, I'm really good. And really, I was an idiot who knew nothing. But I much preferred Goldman, even though it was hard. And I was scared I was going to get fired all the time. But Vanguard's great because you can't get fired unless you cuss in an email or maybe have some version of harassment. You get a company match in your 401k that's really aggressive.
Right.
They never fire anybody, and you can climb the ladder as long as you stay there forever, but you can't go fast, and that never worked that well for me.
But those are different cultures, and there's people for each of those cultures.
100%.
Right? And I generally find the companies, it's proximity bias because I'm around very ambitious young people being at a business school.
And you're in New York versus
100%.
Malvern, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And what I found is that the best companies that really outperform the market have the culture of the following. We own your ass. You're going to have no life. But this is what we're going to do. If you want to go flat out, we're going to let you run as fast as you can. And we have 30-year-olds here making $1 million.
Yep.
And we don't look at them and go, your time will come. You'll be VP at 45. Don't worry. Roger's above you and he's been here 20. You want to go flat out, we'll go as fast as you can run. But it's not balance. It's not paternity leave. It's not pet bereavement leave. The implicit agreement is if you go flat out here and you're good and you're talented and you devote your life to work, which is not for everybody, I'm going to put you where your parents were at 50 at 30.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people who want that culture. They're like, I want to go flat out. I want economic security. I'll have more balance when I'm older. There's also a lot of other people who are like, no, I want to work to live. I want to have kids. I want to have healthy relationships. I want to spend time with my parents. I want to be fit. I want to have weekends and maybe in the summer take Friday off and go to the lake.
They're probably happier.
Good. Yeah, they are probably happier. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And then I worked at one of my first consulting clients was Levi Strauss & Company. They were very maternal. It was summer Fridays, mental health counseling. really cared about their employees. And Morgan Stanley was like, shut the fuck up. We'll give you feedback once a year, and it's called a check, and you'll find out what your bonus was when it hits your bank account. We didn't even get reviews.
I remember that too.
You got a
don't
number.
You remember when they were like, you get a bonus? You're like, how do you calculate it? Excuse me? Don't ask how you calculated this. And now my employees are like, can you please tell me how much you make and when? I'm like, what? But also good for you guys that you have the balls to ask this stuff.
Yeah, quarterly reviews and
yeah,
the world's changed probably for the better. But the majority of the people I'm around, young people, want to go flat out. And the companies that usually outperform the market are the ones that create that culture around going kind of... The ultimate arbitrage in our economy is fossil fuels. But the second of that is finding young, super hardworking, super talented people who are better with technology and paying them 30% of what you're paying Bob, who's a 40-year-old, and they add 90% of the value. They're less mature. They're not very good managers. They're super smart. They don't have dogs or kids, so they're willing to kind of work all the time. That's the ultimate economic arbitrage in corporate America. And the companies that attract that secret sauce, that is very talented young people, outperform everyone else.
That's such a good point. Yeah, today Tanner was like, oh yeah, we've got some free time. We have 23 minutes in between meetings. We were giggling. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what we want. Okay, last question. Elon Musk. Do you not like the guy? You guys get at it at Twitter. Did he really call you insufferable? Did you just put that on a drift? What do we think about Elon?
No, he called me an insufferable numbskull.
On Twitter?
Yeah.
Did you talk back to him?
I don't even remember. I don't remember what I was saying. Yeah, it's not a big deal. And he's actually reached out to me through a friend saying we should get together.
I like that. I like a little bit of, I think you got to push back even on the biggest billionaires. And they can handle it, and they'll probably push back too.
Yeah, look, the problem is we're in a culture where we've decided if someone or a company is a net positive, if I had a button that Elon Musk would have to go back to South Africa, I wouldn't push that button. I think he's been a net good for the world. Inspired the EV race, the space. I mean, seeing that rocket, that booster rocket captured on it as it's falling, that shit's just inspiring. But at the same time, the problem with the word a net good for society is the word net. I also think he should be held accountable for his coarseness and his cruelty. I don't think you attain that level of power such that you cannot pay people their legally obligated severance. I don't think you accuse an employee of being a sex criminal such that that employee has to move their house. I think he's not a very good role model for men. I don't think living alone with none of your 12 children by 3 women with a loaded gun next to your bed is what men should aspire to. So, I think it's just sort of a Greek tragedy. I think he's going to move the world forward. But I think, quite frankly, being coarse and cruel and super into ketamine, I don't think that's something young men should aspire to. So should he be recognized for his achievements? Yes. Should he also be held accountable? And should we be critical of him on the things where I don't think he's living up to his blessings? Yeah. And but look, I don't think he thinks a lot about me, nor should he. But I don't, more generally, the people who are most patriotic are the ones who've invested most in our nation, and that's veterans. They're the most patriotic. The thing I find so distressing about guys like Elon Musk and generally what I'll call this tech bro community is I think they're the most blessed Americans. Or the most blessed people on the planet. Because if you look at a map, if you go up the western coast, you start at San Diego, Qualcomm, and you go up to LA, you get SpaceX and Snap, and you keep going north, you get Salesforce and Meta and Alphabet, and you keep going north, you get Amazon and OpenAI and Microsoft, and then it stops when you hit the Canadian border. Lululemon, maybe, in Vancouver. And then you go down to San Diego, and it stops, and you got to go another 5,000 kilometers until you get to Mercado Libre. Maybe there's something about being in America that has really helped you. And I find these are the first people to shitpost America. So it's like, boss, you don't realize a lot of your success is not your fault. It's the success of other Americans. Every one of these companies is built on a technology that was funded by American middle-class taxpayers, whether it was DARPA, whether Elon Musk got $350 million tax-free loan. He hates subsidies, but he was there for it when we gave him a low-interest $350 million. Their charging stations are being built out by taxpayers. DARPA, the internet, Netflix was built on net neutrality funded by California and the other 49 states' taxpayers. And yet they seem to just dislike America once they have leveraged the shit out of it. And I just find it obnoxious.
I think that's a good pushback. My husband is a contractor still for the Defense Innovation Unit at the Department of Defense in their AI portfolio and runs the commercial portion. And, a lot of what you talk about of us versus China, and which is real, not like us versus the Chinese, but the actual Chinese government, only happens because, the government is willing to fund a bunch of initiatives in Silicon Valley and in venture capital that venture capitalists would not.
No way. They wouldn't get near it.
They wouldn't get near it. You and I both know a lot of people who are full-time venture capitalists. I want to come back in my next life as one because I don't think the real hard work is being the founders, doing the ridiculously hard, masochistic thing that is building a business out of nothing. And I also think, being a government worker, when you have to go to war at a foreign land, which is our soldiers. So
Agreed.
I agree with you. All right. This was incredible. Thank you for being here today. This was so interesting. I learned a ton. And I know that everybody probably knows where to find you. But if I haven't said it before, No Mercy, No Malice, probably my favorite newsletter.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, incredible newsletter overall. And I listened to Adrift in probably like 3 days on audiobook. And then I bought actually the real book too because the graphics are so incredible.
Thank you.
And I think even if people don't read books today, which is more normal, like being able to understand the world through those graphs is very easy. and digestible. So if you haven't read Scott's new book, Adrift, it's really good, as are all the rest. Thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you. Congrats on your success.
Yeah, well, we'll see how long it lasts. All right, guys, I think that's a wrap.
Good. Thanks, everybody.
Do not take enough risk for the amount of money you say you want. And small business acquisition is also the fastest, most overlooked way to build wealth in America. I want you to visualize yourself in this because this could be you. You could be Cody. And not this Cody. He bought a business where he was with what he had. Then he took it to grow it. Hi, I'm Codie Sanchez and welcome to the Big Deal podcast. You want to get rich? Build relationships with people in finance. They understand the game of money. I'll give you 7 acquisition terms you should know to speak their language. But before we get into that, I want to share this quote with you. Michael Jordan didn't wake up early because he loved mornings. He did it because mediocrity felt like a personal insult. He wasn't chasing balance, but meaning. Discipline is dragging your half-dead body to do what you hate. No one writes about the semi-committed. And with that, let's jump into these 7 terms that will make you some money. And you got to stick with me, even if you hate the word finance. The first one, free cash flow or FCF. If you're going to be obsessed with any number in your business, it should be this one. It's the cash left over after you've paid all operating expenses and capital expenditures. Another way to say that is building improvements, vehicle purchases, anything you buy. So we're going to take your operating cash flow minus your CapEx. Net profit, aka net income. It's the total earnings profit calculated after subtracting costs from revenue. Costs here equal cost of goods sold. So depreciation, interest, taxes, and all other expenses. This is the true profit. Like this.
There are 2 types of businesses, a cash suck business and a cash flow business. Here's the difference between the 2. Cash suck, you provide the service, then you get money. Cash flow, you get the money, then you do the service. You only make money maybe 1 or 2 times a year. Cash flow business, lots of little checks continuously, ideally subscriptions. So you have 2 big clients. If they leave, you're in trouble. Cash flow business, you have lots of clients, which diversifies your risk. You use RFPs and custom products so that every time you deliver a service, it looks different, a lot more work for you. Cash flow business, your service is productized, so you deliver the same thing again and again and again. This business that does $1 million in revenue and this business that does $1 million in revenue are not worth the same thing. You want cash flow businesses, repeatable, predictable, de-risked businesses, not cash suck businesses.
Working capital. See this as the cash you use to fund daily operations. Current assets minus current liabilities. Current assets equal cash plus inventory plus money owed by customers. Current liabilities mean accounts payable plus wages payable plus money owed to suppliers. Accounts payable equal the things that you have to pay. Wages payable equal the money you have to pay your employees. And money owed to suppliers is for things you have outstanding, maybe like vendors. EBITDA, the gold standard for talking about true operating profit in deal making. It stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It ignores non-cash expenses, financing, and tax deductions. It's used to calculate what a business is worth. Let's break it down like this. What are the 3 things you need in order to value a small business? First, profit and loss statement. How much money is coming in? How much money is going out? I care about net income, how much money you make that goes in your actual pocket. 2 is tax returns. You want to match up what the owner says they make, aka their P&L, with what they pay the tax man. Because guess what? They're probably not overpaying the IRS. So you know at least that business makes what they said that they make. Third, understanding of the market. What do these things trade at? Small businesses typically trade at anywhere from 2 to let's say 6x profits. So if your small business has 100K in profits, you should be buying it for 200 to 600K. With those 3 things, you're about 80% to where you need to be to know how to value broadly a small business. The devil in the detail is the 20%. Valuation. You'd use this to determine the sales price of a company. It's often calculated as a multiple from EBITDA or SDE, seller discretionary earnings, or profit. Let's say the multiple for auto shops is 3 times EBITDA. The business has an EBITDA of $50,000, then the valuation is $50,000 times 3, that's the multiple, equals $150,000. Next is LBO, aka leveraged buyout. It means using money borrowed mostly from other people to buy a business or do a deal. Similar to how you pay 20% down and borrow 80% from the bank to buy a house. Private equity does this, but for businesses, basically the same thing. The assets of the company are often used as collateral to secure the funds. Next, we got seller financing, where the seller acts as the bank in a deal. You pay them over time at a lower interest rate than a bank, using the profit from the business you buy from them. It's rare but possible to get a business for $0 using this method. And small business acquisition is also the fastest, most overlooked way to build wealth in America, owning boring, profitable businesses that everyone else ignores. If you followed me for a while, you know I give away about 90% of my playbook for free $99. I make YouTube videos, I write books, I give talks around the country, I have a newsletter, I host this podcast, which you subscribe to, right? But there's a reason thousands of people in our community have gone from employee to owner. It's because they got access to the missing 10%, the step-by-step blueprint that uses all of these terms to actually get deals done. So for those of you interested in that last 10%, this September 19th through 21st, I'm hosting Main Street Millionaire Live. 3 days, virtual, where my team and I are going to walk you through exactly how you find, buy, and scale the right business for you. We've put in over 10,000 hours testing this stuff. And after helping more than 9,000 people become owners, we're opening the vault. This is the closest thing you'll get to sitting next to me while we do deals together. So as you listen to this episode, think about it as an appetizer. If you want the full meal, the actual blueprint to financial freedom through ownership, go to msm.live. That's Main Street Millionaire .live, MSM Live, to reserve your spot today. If you click the link in the bio, you get $50 off. That's 50% off the cost of coming to MSM Live. It's like less than a latte, which is ridiculous for you guys to learn how most people get rich in the world. Also, I want to end on this other thing. I just heard an acquisition story that basically made my heart melt. I want you to visualize yourself in this because this could be you. You could be Codie, and not this Codie. This Codie was a 6-year veteran, number 2 at a production company in California, runs the show while his boss lives in Utah. Here's how he went from someone else's employee to becoming an owner of a business in 90 days. Codie landed on our content about ownership. He was 12 years building somebody else's empire. And he'd been leading operations at this production company. At the time, Codie and his wife had been saving for a house, so it wasn't like they had tons of cash lying around. But after having a chat, they decided to use their house fund to buy a cash flowing business instead. Not an easy task, but this happened to be when I launched my 3-day business buying workshop last year. So he attended the whole event, and he shared that those 3 days gave him the tools and the confidence he needed to get to work. And not my words, but his, that's how he bought the business. So as soon as the live event ended, Codie started hunting for deals. He looked at laundromats, a couple other business models, but none were prepared to offer seller financing, what he needed. Props to him for not giving up. And after tons of rejection and people telling him to pound sand, and it would be impossible to find this in Southern California, he eventually landed on Pool Roots. Now, Pool Roots isn't your typical business acquisition, but for context, you only purchase the client base, not the whole business, which is cool. So this caught his eye, and he reached out to the owner. The listing description was like 40 pool route generating $70K annual, seller asking $60K for it, $36K down, $24K seller financing, 0% interest. Guess what Codie's savings were? $36,000. So the seller was retiring and was looking for his next thing. He wanted somebody who'd actually take care of the business, not just extract cash and run. Codie's military background plus genuine interest in learning the industry gave him this credibility. So in 2 weeks, the deal moved from handshake to close. Why so fast? Codie had a tiny window at his job where work was slow. So here's another smart move from Codie, not quitting his job. Don't go all in until you're cash flow positive. So it took him a few months to figure out how to start making money in the business, and now he has a business that's profitable. 3 months into the business, here's what he has accomplished. The route grew from 40 to almost 50 pools. Monthly revenue, $7K. Monthly payment, $2K. Codie's take home, somewhere between $4 and $5K monthly profit while learning the business, which is really impressive. The best part is Codie's already thinking like an owner, hired and training a pool tech, future operator, building systems so he can remove himself from operations. He wanted to hit 150K ARR by the end of the year. Not only that, he has plans to own the entire pool cleaning supply chain. So he's thinking, all right, I'm going to buy some routes. Then I'm going to buy pool supply stores. Then he's going to add on new services like calcium removal or reverse osmosis machines. Those make a lot of extra income because they're bigger projects. Also makes his business more defensible. What I love about Codie's story is he had the guts to bet on himself, and he didn't have to go huge and buy a giant business. He bought a business where he was with what he had. Then he took it to grow it. I love this story because Codie did the thing that most of us just talk about. You want to know a hard truth? You do not take enough risk for the amount of money you say you want. So do the risky thing.
And also, if you're not subscribed to this podcast, hit that fucking subscribe button.
Generating $10 million doing your one thing, you haven't arrived yet. You're not good enough yet.
This episode is with Mike Michalowicz, who wrote the book on profiting first and is going to teach us step-by-step playbooks for you guys to profit and make money right now in your business.
To have a successful business, there's an intersection of three key elements you have to nail. What sales does is it can bring in more cash, but also brings in more organizational stress. You have more responsibility now. Our customers will never say to your face, you know, your business kind of sucks. But what they will do is go online and slam your reputation. So you can't trust their words, but you can trust their wallet. I got a magical Jedi mind trick question. I guess I got two that will blow your mind away. First question.
We've been blown away by how fast this show is growing. Like, getting to hang out with you every single week is so cool. But most of the people who tune in every week still haven't subscribed, which is crazy. It is the simplest way, though, to help us keep scaling, bringing the best guests like Mike Michalowicz and making the big deal a big deal. So I can't thank you enough for your support. Like, we would be nowhere without you guys. And I just want to jump back into my conversation with Mike, but I also want you to do it subscribed. Oh, and share it with a friend if you like this episode. I think it's better when you profit together, you know?
Can I start with some kind of real challenges, rapid fire, that we've heard from owners?
Yeah, throw them at me.
Okay. What if you're a business owner, you're weeks away from running out of money? You're kind of panicked, you don't know what to do next. What's your first move if you call Mike?
All right, so first thing is you acknowledge you're pretty much every business owner on the planet. There's a saying that most businesses are on the brink of failure. And the statistics show that most businesses don't have enough cash flow for 4 weeks. But my analysis, and I love contrarian thinking, my analysis is most businesses are not on the brink of failure because most businesses find a way to survive that moment. Somehow, some way, most businesses, yet again, doggy paddle and get above water. So I think most businesses are on the brink of success. It's just a good strategic move. So what we do, if a business like that calls, and I also invest in businesses, we do what's called reclamation services. We go into businesses that are specifically in struggle, is we go through the client base, we deploy the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule, identify who the best customers are and say, hey, what can we do right now to serve you? Because they're already the best customers. We get revenue in that way. We usually cut the lowest 20% of customers because inevitably they are costing you money and you don't even see it. It's like, oh, I'm making revenue. This is great. The expenses are in excess of the revenue, and the emotional weight is killing you. So we get rid of the unfit customers, we amplify the best customers, and we start realigning the business around that.
I love it. So 2 moves. You call up your best customers and say, basically, you're asking them, but not this way. How can we sell you more things? Which is what else do you need, and how do we increase the LTV of every single person?
Yeah, and you tell them you love them. Like when you tell a customer, hey, you're such an important customer to me. I value you so much. I just want to see if there's any other way to serve you. Yeah. Reciprocity kicks in. They're like, we love you too. And we were thinking about getting this. Can you do it? Yeah.
I love that. Okay. What do you do for someone who has more revenue than they've ever had before, but is actually making less profit?
That, again, is every business I know. I was speaking yesterday at an event, and I asked the group, it's similar size. I said, who wants to increase their revenue? Everyone's like, that's what we need to do. That's the solution. I said, arguably, that's one of the most dangerous things to do because it's a reckless belief. We believe that sales cures everything, and that is total nonsense. Total nonsense. What sales does is it can bring in more cash, but also brings in more organizational stress. You have more responsibility now, more things you need to service. So when a business says we're cranking up revenue, I am looking to see, are they doing it through diversifying their offering, which I think is a mistake. Instead of becoming special, they're doing many things and they dilute their ability, they're not efficient. We'll look, are they serving customers with varying demands? Customers that are perhaps big names, but then they assert their strength. I had a client of mine I worked with. Walmart was their best customer, #1 in revenue. We looked at them, their demands were off the charts. They said, when you deliver your product, it was like a bracelet thing, they said, it's gotta come on a Monday at 10:30 in the morning, and if you're outside like a 5-minute window, we're gonna penalize you. If the SKU, that UPS code, if it's more than a 1/4 inch below the top of the box, we're gonna penalize you. And Walmart does this for efficiency, that's why they do it. But my client, they saw that as good revenue, it was crushing them with the penalties. Their #2 customer was Dollar General. Is that around here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dollar General's like, hey, deliver it whenever you can because we're always playing second fiddle to Walmart. So, Cody, you'll love this. Here's what he did. He put a sign above his desk and he had 15 employees. The sign says this, our policy is to answer the call in the first ring. If it's the Dollar General, answer the call and start taking their order. And if Walmart calls, let it go to voicemail and then call them back when you're done. The miraculous thing was the next one. It said, we always answer in the first ring. If the first call is Walmart, start taking their order. But while you're on the phone with Walmart, if Dollar General calls, immediately hang up on Walmart. Like, say, sorry, we have an emergency, disconnect and prioritize. So they're not cutting off customers or revenue, but they're prioritizing the quality revenue. It transformed his business. It was a family business. It was 25 years old. They were struggling to get 4 million. It went 4, 18, 27, sold it.
You know what's crazy too, and we'll take you guys through this process. So you'll go through a process where you basically analyze your cash flow, and we'll use a 13-week rolling cash flow, which I love. And then we'll also talk to you about your underlying clients. What's your best avatar versus your worst? Because I think a lot of times we lump our business all together. We don't know what customers cost us to get, and we certainly don't know what customers cost us to keep. And it's not because we're bad operators, it's because we're busy. And it's sort of hard. And so it takes this pause and analysis. And the truth of it is, your team is not going to do that. That is going to have to be a you thing at most levels of the business.
That is brilliant. I'll add to that, there's a real simple strategy that we've deployed. And what you do is you sort your clients out over the last year, the revenue they've generated for you. And the reason is people lie to each other constantly because it's social grace. Like when you saw me, like, hey, Mike, it's so good to see you. I'm a huge fan. I'm like, are you, Cody? Are you? But
I am.
Thank you. But could you imagine you come up to me and say, oh, your books really suck, Mike? Like, you can't do that because of social grace and not be like, well, that's offensive. And then we get into this disagreement. Or customers will never say to your face, your business kind of sucks. Poop 911's here. Oh, it's kind of like more turd 411. You know what I'm saying? like they're never gonna. That was a good one. That was good. That was juicy. But they would never say that to you. But what they will do is go online and slam your reputation. So you can't trust their words, but you can trust their wallets. So don't trust words, trust wallets. If they buy from you repeatedly or they're demonstrating they value you. But there's a second test. It's the intersection of them valuing you, spending money, with your appreciation and enjoyment of them. So when the car ID pops up on your phone, are you like, oh my gosh, they're amazing? Or are you like, oh gosh, I wish they didn't exist? Which one do you pick? Because if you have a customer that generates a lot of revenue, but you don't like working with them, you automatically, inherently, subconsciously perhaps, deprioritize their service. You don't call them back as quickly, you delay it, you avoid it. So we want the intersection of best customers that you love working with, circle those customers and start to clone them. And what I mean by cloning them, I find out where they congregate, where's their associations or communities, where's the people like them hanging out, and I'm gonna insert myself there.
That's so good. Yeah, we obsess on client avatars, and I feel like the number one thing that most people do wrong in business is they sell demographically as opposed to really nailing their avatar. Like, I've never met a 45 to 65-year-old male 40% of the time and 60% of the time a woman. I mean, these days, who knows? But historically, no. And so, I really like this idea of what are the characteristics of this type of avatar, and then how do we go after them?
Yeah, and look for the congregation points. So when I'm targeting a market, I'll say, is there an association for this? This is when I'm selling B2B. Is there an association? Is there some kind of meetups or something like that? For example, maybe I'm serving pilots, retired pilots. Well, I'd say, is there a retired pilot association? Which actually I know there is. So that's an opportunity. They're already congregating. But if I looked for single moms who hate their mom, that demographic exists, perhaps even in this room. But do they have a meetup club? Maybe not. If they don't have a congregation point, you have to assemble it yourself. It is the most exhausting, time-consuming effort. It rarely fails. So when someone says, I have a niche, it's, I serve single moms who don't like their moms. I mean, that's not a niche, because you have to now assemble them together. But if you're serving the airline retired pilot association, I know where they're going. They may have a dedicated podcast, and you insert yourself there, and they see you ubiquitously. They see you everywhere.
So good. Let's zoom out for a second. What does everyone get wrong about making money in business?
Okay, so this is very opinionated. It ain't about the money. And you probably heard that before, and when you don't have the money, it's very easy to say. It's very easy to focus on the money, and then when you do have the money, it's very easy to say it ain't about the money. My perspective is both. So I became a multimillionaire when I was in my early 30s. I had an exit to Fortune 500, Robert Half International. You've sold quite a bit.
I do remember that.
You remember them? They had account temps, office temps.
Yeah.
I was doing computer crime investigation, and the Enron trial broke. My company, right place, right time, we got the Enron trial. Now, to give context, we were not the prosecution. That's the FBI, the CIA, we were the defense. So if you remember names like Kenneth Lay, Andrew Fastow, they were our clients. They were guilty, by the way. I was their defense. They were guilty. And we got put on the map very quickly. What I assumed was, when I sold that business, and it was a lot of money, I was like, I've arrived. But I really didn't. What I did, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but it's important to admit it, is I thought I had to show the effects. So I bought all the stable of cars. I got a private place out in Lanai, which is an island owned by Larry Ellison now. For sabbatical, we got a place in a very affluent town in New Jersey where I live. And I'm like, look how important I am, people. And no one gives two craps. Then, total idiot, I blew all my money because I thought I knew everything. I knew very little. And with the collapse, no one really cared either. No one really cares. I found the essence of a good business is that it's an expression of our purpose. I know from the interviews I listened that you do, from the literature you put out, you're such an authentic, real human, that this platform is an expression of who you are. Listen, your mom is here. The last time my mom came, I was doing a puppet show in 3rd grade. That's a dream to have your mom here. Which also indicates the authenticity in this. I think too many entrepreneurs go for the money only to find out that was a mistake. We gotta go for it because it's an expression of our heart. That's my opinion.
Oh, it's so true. And you know what else is crazy that I love that you talk about often? That statement, "it's never about the money," was so triggering to me when I didn't have any money. I'm like, that's cute, Mike. Like, give me $1 million, I'll figure it out.
Right.
But what I've increasingly realized is you never don't have enough money, you don't have enough knowledge.
That's right.
Because if you had more knowledge, you'd see that there are 372 ways to get the cash.
Yeah.
And the real question is just like, what's the best way? That like what's the best game you want to play? What's the right game you want to play for you? Who's the right investor? What's the right way to get capital? Like, it's just, then it becomes what's the right fit, never just it doesn't exist, why don't I have it?
Yeah.
And if I could impart one thing to people more often, it would be that. And that you can make money doing anything, which is great. Pooper scooper, you know? Like, we're just, also, everybody should just wear their business shirts here, because look how much marketing. You guys are gonna have like an ad on this podcast. It costs $1 billion, not for you two. Poop 911, call my ladies.
Do you mind if I flip it on? I got a question for you.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So when it comes about money, I heard recently, and I've experienced this, and I'm curious about you, is there's not a single person who's ever had enough money. So I was talking to personal finance experts as this interview series, and consistently I heard wherever someone is financially today, they feel their freedom is double of their current worth. So if you're worth $100,000, when I get a $200,000, I'm good. And people too are saying 4, and people in the middle are saying 2. So I'm curious, have you arrived financially?
Oh, no.
No, right?
Never.
Bullshit.
I know, is that
But
crazy?
also true.
Yeah.
And me neither.
Well, even like Mom, we were having this walk this morning. Remember what you asked me? She was like, aren't you proud? Like the headquarters, and look how everything's grown. And because most of my businesses have been remote for many, many years. I ran businesses where we had people all over the world. She's like, you have look, I can touch it, you know? Or do you take a second? And I literally was like, it feels like, what did I say? We haven't scratched the surface yet. So I totally think about it zero at any level, but it's also because I love the game. Not necessarily like I want the bank account to be bigger. I still have, don't get me wrong. I mean, what do you ask me every time she sees me? She asks me, but who takes care of the money at your company? Every time, don't you? She's always like, but who's the CFO? Who's in charge of making sure you don't run out of money? Because if you didn't grow up with any money, that's like deep inside all of us. We're just like, but who's in charge, and are they stealing from us? Yeah. And the answer is like, yeah, people are gonna steal from you at some point. That is true. And it'll also be fine, and you'll keep going. But yeah, I agree. I don't think there's ever enough, but if you can flip it to stop talking about the dollar amount and start talking about like, it's never enough because I just want to see what am I capable of? Like, I want to die having squeezed every last drop out of me. That's when I think it starts to get fun.
100%.
You've seen the rarest of things, which is you lost it all.
Yeah.
And I think that is off. How many people here are almost more scared of people knowing that you lost it all and like seeing the flame out than actually not having the cash? Who else? I see a lot of nodding.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is what scares us. But you're a perfect example of like, I was there. Nobody fucking cared, and I'm fine.
No one cares.
That's wild.
Like, no one cares. And it is true that saying that the people who do care don't matter, and the people that matter, do care.
Wait, can I ask you a question? Did you have a very dark moment then when you were like, I lost everything. This is how I defined myself. Who am I?
Yeah. You want to go there?
Okay. Just in front of our 20 new best friends.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I wrote about it in my book. So this is the moment. So become a millionaire. I buy all these things. I got to start off with the arrogance I had. I bought a Land Rover, a BMW, and a Dodge Viper, all within 4 hours on the same day. Thanks for laughing. Right? And I thought, and the Viper was because in college, I saw the Viper. I said, when I arrive one day, I'll get it. I got this place out in Hawaii for a sabbatical. I joined a club. I also started investing. I invest in a whole different way now. I used to do basically private equity, putting in, but small tranches, angel, 50, 100, 200, all these different businesses. And this arrogant dick was like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're here, Cody. Mike's here. Here's the money. We have me. I have the Midas touch. I believed my own story. And there is, I looked up in the Webster Dictionary, there is a word for someone who has arrogance and ignorance. The word is dick. It's true. It is true. I was a total dick. And the Dodge Viper is like the winning trophy for dicks. Like, I, within 2 years, evaporated all that wealth. I lost every penny, Cody. And I'll never forget, my accountant calls me. It was February 14th, 2008, Valentine's Day. And he says, Mike, you have to declare bankruptcy. I didn't have enough money to pay my tax bill that year, and it wasn't even a tax bill. I came home. I have 3 children. My wife and my kids had prepared a meal, and I was sobbing when I came home. And that's when I told them what happened. I lost everything. Now, I'd been lying to my family by omission. My wife was like, how's business? And I saw my bank account. I don't know if you've been there. You see it dwindling. So logically, I saw it, but emotionally, I wasn't ready to accept it. I'm like, that one client's coming. So my wife would say, how's things going? I'm like, it's fine. It's good. But I had to face it. We lost our house 30 days later. We liquidated all our assets. The cars were gone. Viper was gone, thank God. Everything's gone. But this was the moment, and I'll probably start crying, so I got to go quick. My daughter asked me, she goes, Daddy, she was 9, can I still go to horseback riding lessons? Now, to give you context, it was $20 for a group of like 10 kids, and they ride around for a half hour. And I said, I'm so sorry, we don't have anything. And as I said that, she got up and she ran as fast as she could into her room, and I hear the door slam, and I'm sobbing. I'm like, oh my God, you and I, and we define ourselves as providers. We are here to provide for ourselves, our family, our community, our globe. And like my one effing job, I can't do it. My daughter is so scared, she ran away from me. And as I'm saying that, I hear something going. The door comes swinging open, and she comes running down with those gangly legs, and she has a piggy bank in her hand. And she goes, Daddy, Daddy. She goes, I'll pay our bills. I was so embarrassed of that day. And you know what's a saying about rock bottom? As difficult as it is, at least there's only one way to go, which is up, right? It's a beautiful saying. It's total bullshit. It's total bullshit. You hit the bottom, you get dragged along the floor of self-disdain and hatred. I'm like, I'm a scumbag. And I went through 2 years of depression, self-diagnosed. I never went to a therapist. Do now. You should. Drank a lot. I don't now. But in reflection, it's the greatest moment of my life because I said, I'm going to fix this. Your traumas, whatever they may be, my traumas, our traumas often are the biggest opportunity. I'm on a path. I'm committed to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty because I know how visceral it is. I know how freaking bad it is. I am committed to make every entrepreneur I come in contact with as profitable as possible. Because honestly, I need to learn that for myself. What we teach is what we need to learn. And so I'm just putting it out there, putting it out there, putting it out there. I'm not great with money. I'm better. But God, I'm never going to stop teaching it.
I love that. How many of you guys resonate with that? And you've had, yeah. I mean, my dad calls it the head in the hands in the dark with no idea what to do moment. And I've had one too.
What was yours?
Mine was the same thing. A company was almost out of cash that we had, and I didn't tell anybody. And mine was like really, it was almost so fast. It was like a cancer diagnosis where you die the next 30 days. Like I didn't know. I didn't really have the slow burn. We had made a terrible mistake in a business. And it's often, I think mistakes are usually who's, not how's. Yeah. And so I had trusted somebody, and that was my fault. And I had let them have too much control over one of these businesses. And the way that they had reported it had not really anticipated some expenses we were going to have, and also that we would have seasonality in the business. And I was so embarrassed about it that I called him in the middle of the night, and he said 2 things to me. He said, one, when we step on a nail at a construction site, we don't ask how we got there, what happened, what's going on, do I take a bubble bath so I feel better? We pull out the fucking nail. And so he goes, you're going to do the hard thing. You're going to do the hard thing right now, which is you're going to look at your business, and that's why I obsess for all of you guys on making sure that when you are in that poverty center, how do we get out of it immediately? How do we, fuck the emotions, fuck the feelings, we pull out the nail. You don't wonder how the nail got there. You fix the safety issues later. You wear better boots the next time. And so he did a really good job of snapping me out of it, of saying, instead of staying here worrying about it, which is why I'm always saying to you guys, money really likes speed. He basically was like, why would you worry about this one more second? You're not going to sleep anyway tonight. Stay up. Stay up. Let's look at the books. Let's fix this. And what I've found in investing in hundreds of businesses now, it's almost always fixable, to your point. Almost always. But the reason it won't be is because you don't move fast enough, you don't have people who have been there before around you, and you don't focus on profit. You focus on what is going to look good, what is going to be okay. Yeah. Like sometimes you got to do the really awful thing, which is rip off the Band-Aid. But I'm so glad you talked about that, because one of our missions here is, we've looked a lot at the data surrounding small business, and most small businesses fail. That is true. Most of them do. Nobody talks about it. Most of them do. And a lot of the reason why, I think, is due to not having systems of control for situations in which emotion gets high. You have a ton of systems and stories and ways that you kind of are honest about yourself. You keep yourself in your, I'll call it your bumper lanes, because you know that you have self-awareness to be like, I'm not the best with money. The people that get in trouble are the ones that think they're the best with it, right? And so I want to talk about a couple of things. You can kind of pick which one. I want to talk about either the pumpkin plan, or I want to talk about clockwork, or I want to talk about beacon. Do any of those speak to you in this?
Yeah, they do. So I'd say pumpkin plan to start. What I did, just to give context, that's one of the books I wrote. And it's the runner-up to Profit First in popularity. What I did was I hired a business coach before business coaches really existed. This is back in the 90s. And he came into my business and said, day one, we're going to go to a pumpkin field. I'm like, what? He's like, you got to understand biology because there's this thing called biomimicry. And when you study what Mother Nature's figured out, she's pretty freaking smart and she spent a lot of time figuring things out. You can copy those strategies and usually they have a better success rate than something that's artificially engineered. So I went to a pumpkin farm and I studied colossal pumpkin farming. And sure enough, it works for business too. So that's the context.
Talk about why and what you got from it.
Yeah, so there was a few things. The first one was, it's called seed selection. And basically, to have a successful business, there's an intersection, it's like a Venn diagram of 3 key elements you have to nail, and the likelihood of growing is much greater than otherwise. Most entrepreneurs simply say, I'm doing this because this is my historical vocation, I have some experience, I'm gonna do it, or I heard you can make a lot of money doing it. And I don't know if either of those are actually necessarily good. The first thing that we ask, and I ask myself, is do I have something that's truly distinct in the industry? Can you redefine the industry? I'll give you a personal example. Who's heard of the Savannah Bananas here? Okay, they're exploding, right? So Jesse Cole is a friend from before, right when the Savannah Bananas were starting, and they used Profit First. I went down and coached the organization. What he did was say, what is the industry doing currently and sucks about it? He said, I don't know if any of you know this, but baseball is boring. It's boring. So he's like, that sucks. And he went through all these different things. So the first thing he said is, what are the things that people don't like? I'm gonna unsuck it. That sounded very, I don't know why it sounded so gross, but it did. So he and his wife, Emily, started to redefine baseball to make it not boring and to make it entertaining. The second thing is they put intentional constraints in place. So they use Profit First, which inherently means there's less money to spend. And one of my favorite things is he said, we don't have enough money for like a cheer squad or anything to entertain people. So he's like, what do you do when you have no money? He's like, you ask your fans. So he said, if you're 80 years or older, and you're a woman, you're on our cheer squad, and teeth are optional. And it's true for half the squad. I met the squad, and they're the Nana Bananas. And people lose their effing minds. Like, we lose our minds watching this. So what makes you truly unique, better than the competition, is not noticeable. You answer the phone in 2 rings, I answer in 1. I'm technically better. The customer won't notice. You run a standard baseball game, I have a grandma banana dancing around, I win. You gotta be different. Secondly is you have to have client demand for it. So I could do something very different. I could be your first guest that comes dressed like Bozo the Clown, waka waka. I come in with my big floppy shoes. Everyone will notice it's different, but is there demand for a weirdo that does that? Maybe not, and now I've compromised myself. So who's the customer that wants that? And it's not your standard baseball fan. They're not there for the winning game, they're there for the winning experience. So he's redefined the customer. And the last part is, to your earlier point, is systemization. And most people don't understand what systemization is. Systemization is where you can attract prospects, convert them to customers, collect revenue, have them raving about the experience, all while you're sleeping, without any of your active input. With the entrepreneur not doing any of that, now you have a systemized business. And so what I learned from the pumpkin plan is that's the seed. And just like growing a colossal pumpkin, you need a seed that matches the environment, the soil content, the climate. You need a seed that matches up with those 3 elements.
Some of the greatest businesses start as nothing more than a notebook full of scribbles. But ideas aren't enough. They need execution. With GoDaddy Aero, execution is fast. A few prompts and you get a website, logo, email, and even social content. Minutes, not months. You go from scribbles on a paper to a polished online business you can actually grow. So stop waiting, stop overthinking, launch your business today with GoDaddy Aero. Head to godaddy.com/Codie Sanchez and see what's possible there.
By the way, this live episode, if you guys liked it, if you want more, well, I have a live event. I only do one a year. It's huge. How big? Really big. In Austin, Texas, just for people who want to make more money, buy businesses, build businesses. It's called Main Street over Wall Street. So if you liked this episode, you're probably going to want to be there. There's only a couple hundred spots left. So click below. I want to shake your hand in person in Austin, Texas, or go to msows.com. MSOWS. We'll see you there.
So let's say that somebody doesn't have their, I believe you call it their prize pumpkin. Let's say that they don't have this differentiator, this unique component. What do you tell them to do? How do people start thinking about that?
Dude, I don't know why I called you dude. Is that cool?
I love dude.
All right,
yes.
Dude. I called my friends dude, so I didn't even
That's
know.
great. Me too.
Subconsciously, you just qualified. So dude, this is what you gotta do. I got a magical Jedi mind trick question. I guess I got two that will blow your mind away. And it's not what you think. That's how Jedis roll. First question, ask your best customers, those ones we identified, what am I doing right? Now here's why this is a Jedi mind trick. They will not tell you what you're doing right. So I used to work with hedge funds. They were one of my first company. We did technical services for hedge funds. They had Bloomberg's and ILX and all these different systems. I went to my best customer, Appaloosa Management. I said, what am I doing right? And they said, you respond very quickly. Now, this is in the 90s. They said the typical computer guy was taking like a full day to get on site when our system went down. They got backup systems, but you get on site within 4 hours. Now, here's the Jedi part. When your customer tells you you're doing right, they don't tell you what you're doing right. They tell you how they're judging you, what they're observing. You and I you do thousands of things for your customer. Your customer does not see the 1,000 things. They see 1 or 2 things. So when you ask them what I'm doing right, they tell you the thing they see. So when my client said, you respond quickly, I said, holy crap, I'm not responding fast enough. Because that's what he's measuring. So I figured out a way, it was real simple, dispatch one of my technicians or myself to be within a half-hour radius of Appaloosa Management, and anytime he had a problem, I would leave my other clients, I have an emergency with my number 1 client, Dollar General, get there, and I was getting on site within a half hour. Within a month, he's like, I don't know what you're doing, dude, but it is blowing my mind. Like, the service level has skyrocketed. He's like, we're telling everyone about it. So trick 1 is what I'm doing right is actually what you need to do better. Trick 2 is what am I doing wrong? But here's a Jedi mind trick. Don't ask what you're doing wrong because people lie to each other, social consequence. Ask what is wrong with my industry. It's the person outside the room. So like, when I leave here, you can have a candid conversation like, oh, Mike was not that good. He spoke a little quickly and he did a lispy thing that didn't work. Like whatever, you can say what you want. But to my face, you're like, oh, you were great. Good tips, Mike. You can't tell me the truth to my face only when I leave. So have the conversation about the person outside the room, the general industry. So I said, what's wrong with the computer industry? This is when you don't remember the Palm Pilot, you're way too young. Do you anyone remember the Palm Pilot? Okay, you're over 50. Over 50. No, you're not over 50. If you don't know what the Palm Pilot was, it was the first smartphone that was neither smart nor a phone. That's basically it, right? It was the weirdest thing. And he said, my computer company, my last guy tried to repair the Palm Pilot, and he charged me more than just replacing it. I wish there was fixed billing. We moved to fixed billing in the early 2000s when MSPs only moved to it in the 2015s or so. So what am I doing wrong is your opportunity what's the industry doing wrong is your opportunity to differentiate from the industry.
That's so good.
I got fired up there.
It's good. I mean, it is amazing how the right questions serve you so much better than the immediate answers. It's because you can just rinse and repeat. One of my pet peeves at our companies is we send a lot of surveys. I hate surveys. So I have like how many of you guys get a survey? You're like, thank God that came out. I needed more things to respond to in my email inbox. It's my huge pet peeve. I'm always like, instead, we should actually, I'm curious on it. I'm like, we should actually try to sell people more things. And the reason why is because then you actually know what they want. And if you sell something and nobody wants it, you're like, oh, that's the survey.
That is
the money's
gold.
The survey.
That is gold.
Right?
So I remember.
Do entrepreneurs sell enough to their customers? Are most entrepreneurs scared of selling?
They absolutely do not sell enough, and they don't sell the right way. I actually believe MVPs are not the right way to sell. So an MVP is a minimum viable product. I think that's too far advanced. We do a technique we call sell to tell. What we do is say, I was a co-owner in a manufacturing business for a while. We made leather products, sheaths specifically for knives. And instead of making a prototype and seeing what was out there, we simply announced to our audience, we're thinking about making a sheath and it's going to have this feature and that feature. Are you interested in buying it? But we ask the most important question. If you are, put down a deposit now. People speak the truth through their wallets. I was actually thinking about doing a conference at my old high school, but to pull it off, we needed 250 people there. Reached out to our audience. We had 75 people put a deposit down, and we said, no, this isn't going to go, and refunded their deposits. Ironically, prior to that, our marketing team said, well, why don't we just ask? We had over 1,000 people say, oh, I'm in. That's amazing. And if we acted on that, we would have blown money and embarrassed myself at my old high school.
I'm always scared people aren't going to show up for my parties.
Oh, cool. Rock and roll.
Literally every time. Still, it never stops. Okay, so you sell to tell, which I love.
Yeah.
Do you have any good frameworks for how to know if you are selling enough as an entrepreneur? It's one of my beliefs that most entrepreneurs are too scared to sell, and so they don't do it frequently enough. How do you know if you're selling enough?
The act of selling as opposed to the dollar number.
100%.
Yeah.
Are we asking our customers for enough things? Are we asking for enough upsells? Are we? What is our relation between content and actual conversion?
Yeah, I think the two indicators is if you have customers come back to you and say, please stop that, that's a good indicator, and listen up, particularly your quality clients. Often we listen to the one naysayer who doesn't matter, like, you sell so much, you totally suck, and they've never bought from you, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll never sell again. So listen to your best customers. Secondly is if you see every time you sell a decline in purchasing, and I've seen that before, that someone sells so much, people are like, you know what, I'm just turned off to you. All you do is sell. I think we have to care for our customers at an amplitude of a 5-to-1, maybe a 10-to-1, just acts of service, caring for them, educating them, entertaining them, because that builds reciprocity, and then the sell becomes obvious. But I think particularly small businesses serve at like 100 to 0. Like all they're doing is like, I love my community, I'll do anything for them, and they don't monetize it. I would say, Cody, your customers, people in this room, my customers, not in this room, maybe, want us to be profitable. And your clients want you to be profitable. In fact, it's the number one customer, number one person in your life that wants you to be profitable is not you, it's actually your customer. And we don't believe that. Could you imagine, you go to see your doctor, you have a heart situation, you rush in, Dr. 1 comes out and she says, here's the situation, I'm not profitable. I'm nearly broke. I'm really paying for money. I'm just selling anything to anyone, and I've decided to generalize. I'm going to do neurosurgery, pediatrics, geriatrics, anything with an actics, I'm in. Dr. 2 comes out and she says, I am wickedly profitable. I make a boatload of money because I am wildly successful at what I do. In fact, all I do is serve this one situation. Which doctor are you going to pick? Dr. 2. You want your doctor to be profitable. And listen, maybe you're not providing life-saving services. You're providing life-altering services. Your customers want to know that you're profitable because then you treat them as the number one customer. They won't say, hey, can you charge me more? Can you rip me off a little? But they will say, I want your undivided attention. I want the best of you. And all those things are indicators of I want you to be profitable. I see you. I see you.
Well, it's such a good point. I mean, I don't know if anybody else feels like Mark Zuckerberg knows their purchasing pattern better than their husband does, but like Mark's got me on Instagram. Those ads come up, I want to buy. But if I go to double click on a shirt or an outfit, and the cost of that shirt or outfit is like $7.99, I don't buy. Why? Because I think the quality is going to be bad, because I think it's not actually going to be a good service. So not only do I think we don't sell enough, I think we price ourselves out of deals all the time because we're the cheapest, because we're like, oh, no, I want to overserve the customer. No, you lost my business because I don't trust that it could be quality at that price. And so I want to talk a little bit. You have multiple.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah, that's what I want you to do.
So I would buy that $7 shirt. And I think what's important about that is you have to bifurcate your customers. A large majority of customers are the cheapo customers. And that's me in that situation. But you care about the quality of your clothing, and therefore you're going to pay a premium. Now, I play guitar. I bet you if I saw a $1,000 guitar, I might buy it. I don't know if you play guitar. Do you? Okay. So you'll buy the $7 guitar, I suspect. And what price dictates is the quality of customer. You will find customers at the lower price point. And for anyone here that sells at a low price point, if you ever found that your customers are really bitchy and moany and they really suck, it's because you're attracting the shit customer, the one who says, I don't really care about this, I just need a shirt, so I'll pay the $7. And that's why I think we need to have a higher price. We get a higher value customer that's more vested in the outcome, and they're actually a higher quality customer.
What do you think about, I tend to think that when you solve rich people's problems, they pay more and they appreciate it more, by and large. And when you're a junior entrepreneur, or not even junior, when you're not the best entrepreneur in the world, I almost like solving more luxury problems because there's more margin in them typically, and you don't have to get as many. So it doesn't have to be such a volume game until you're good. Do you think that's true? Or do you think when you go and serve luxury customers, you better be luxury, you better be top tier, you better be great?
Great. That's a good question. I think the quantity game is really difficult to compete in because you only become profitable when you can handle that volume, which means exacting systems. That's why Walmart's so good. But they have to demand from their providers that it has to arrive at 10:30 and there has to be a SKU at a certain point. Small businesses, we don't have the resources typically to pull that off, so that's very difficult. When it comes to quality I think is misunderstood. Quality, I think we hear that and we say, well, it's a special fabric or it's something that's really of long-lasting value. But quality simply means distinct. I'll give you an example. My youngest son, this is like a bad father moment. When he was 6 years old, I wanted to show him what devotion and commitment was, and it was the Olympics. It was like the Beijing Olympics. Michael Phelps wins like gold number 1 billion. And in this particular race, I don't know if you all remember, he was actually in 3rd place, and he's swimming like super hard, and there's like 3 meters to go. He's in 2nd place. There's a meter to go, and the person in the lead, I think from the Ukraine, is reaching out to touch the wall, and Phelps jumps out of the water like a shark and slaps the wall. And there's like this long pause, and it pops up, and Michael Phelps won by 0.001 seconds. And I jump up, I'm watching my son, I'm like, Jake, that's the world's best. That's how you do it. Total commitment, total devotion. That's the highest level performer. And he looks at me, he goes, but Daddy, Michael Phelps isn't the world's best. Jimmy Mickeldorf is. Now, here's the bad dad moment. I said, who the fuck's Jimmy Mickeldorf? I never heard of it. He's like, Daddy, he's in kindergarten. Never say it to your kids, by the way. He goes, Daddy, Jimmy's in my kindergarten class. He can swim across Mountain Lake. It's a lake near us. And he's like, he's the only kid in the world that can do it. I was like, oh my gosh. So the context of the best and quality is the context of the consumer's world. For me, it's the Olympic stage. For him, it's his kindergarten class. And Susie can make the biggest cannonball. She's a rock star for him. And it's like, oh my gosh, I am such an idiot. So when it comes to quality, I just ask, we have to know who our customer is. And what can we do that's unique and distinct to them they never experienced before? And now you've introduced quality.
That's so good. Let's talk about distraction a little bit. You have a lot in multiple of your books. I think I'm referencing the pumpkin plan more here, but how do you personally decide when to double down on an idea versus when to call it a distraction and cut it?
Yeah. So we generally look at a revenue threshold because that's just a shocking metric to many small businesses. We generally say if you're not generating $10 million doing your one thing, you haven't arrived yet, you're not good enough yet. For most businesses, that's about 0.001% of the market cap. So it's nothing. Yet most businesses said, oh, we're doing $300,000 in revenue. I should diversify and do more things. And it starts diluting you. It's all about the efficiency game. That's where we focus. The second thing is we just do diagnostics with AI. It's so easy now. Just look at the customer base, what they're consuming, what's the profitability per product, and we just focus in on those few things. I think businesses pursue diversification too quickly because we hear if you're diversified, you're safe, you're protected, but it also stalls growth.
Do you think entrepreneurs should ever have multiple businesses before they do $10 million in revenue?
If I say no, I'm a hypocrite. So I have many businesses that aren't doing $10 million.